share a dirty little secret, because you know all the insights.
Shifted $10 million into an account overseas or something that should have been used for a homeowners project. So,
You ever have people steal from you?
Oh yeah. Saturday morning, we are meeting in the office. Here's all the checks. We're writing all the checks, paychecks on Friday, but there's no money in the bank.
Is storm chasing really a sellable business model?
Two different worlds. One is civil and one is criminal. But
So would you say that market is oversaturated now?
we did 25 million in that storm, which was over a year and a half.
Who would do stuff like that? Do you go to church? Do you read Bible?
I read the Bible.
What's the last time you cried?
Some people get addicted to cocaine. My 3-year-old daughter's mom, who I have custody now, developed a very bad drug addiction. I think it was meth or something. We're going to talk about some of those things that you said.
No, sure.
You know why? Because some of them were true. You're in Vegas, you're there with a couple thousand guys, but I do look back and recognize that I could have done things a little differently. You start taking a substance that keeps you moving, shaking and moving, shaking and moving. Some people, college students, have a problem with that role. For a while there, that became an issue. Her mom dropped her off on her 2nd birthday and sent me a text and said she's gonna check into rehab, and she didn't come back.
This interview had been probably 5-6 years in the making. We had each other on the block list for 5 years. I've tried for a couple of years to get him sit down for the interview. Would not happen. I actually appreciate this man for his damage control. You're amazing how you do your damage control. It does not matter what people talk about you. It does not matter, how big you fail. You always come out of it and you turn it around. I've watched it so many times. I just want to start with a brief story how we got reconnected. Actually, Lee Haight fight, out of all things. Funny story. I'm watching on my stories. Someone, mutual friend from us, you might know who it is. I see people watching, in the stories, watching the fight. I'm like, who is that? I click on it, and it wasn't you. It was another person. I don't even know who it is. But in his video is Anthony Delmedico reacting and commenting on
Mike Holmes.
It wasn't Mike
Dave
Holmes.
Liberty.
Maybe.
Liberty.
So I'm watching and it's like, oh, even Delmedico watched the fight. The very next day, Ben Fisher reached out to me. He's like, hey, Delmedico would like to do an interview with you. And then Mike Holmes reached out. I'm like, what's going on? And then we connected. What do you think about the fight?
Well, I used to box in the in the Army back in the day, and then I did Golden Gloves. So I understand when you get in there. A lot of people don't understand when you get in that ring what happens. When that first punch is thrown, everything disappears. And all you see is another person, and he's trying to kill you.
Yep.
And you're trying to kill him, and you got ego involved. So it's hats off for getting in the ring, number one, for you and Lee. I thought Lee was going to win. I'll be honest, because I know you guys both trained hard.
I thought he's going to win. He should.
I know you're probably stronger, but I always assume that a guy that had 2 to 3 years, 4 years in the ring experience usually beats the guy who doesn't have the ring experience, because they learn how to counter, shift their weight. It takes time to learn how to do that. You know what I'm talking about? I know you trained, but he's probably been in the ring 3-4 years longer. So, and in the first round, you could see his skill was greater than yours, because he was boxing a little bit in the beginning. He was using his jab, and it was working. And I think
I have no idea why I did not protect myself. I saw every jab coming at me. I was like, I know what you should do.
Was that your first time in an actual, not sparring, but in an actual fight?
Yeah, that's why.
That's why.
You froze.
Yeah.
You should do this. You should do this. You should do this. And I have a big nose, and I'm like, my nose can handle it. Bring it on.
So, I saw the first round. That's what I expected to happen, and I thought he would outbox you. I think 2 things. One is, I think he went in too hard towards the end of the first round and came out trying to go for the knockout, and that's sometimes the biggest mistake. He could have boxed more.
Yep.
Not know if that would have worked, but sometimes that does work, especially, moving back instead of going in for the kill, the knockout punch right away. Then I saw you come out in the second round, and you must have learned something in the first round, because you still weren't using your jab. You weren't using your jab, but that overhand right, is that what your overhand right was a killer shot. And somewhere in the middle of the second round or the end, I remember seeing that overhand right come out, and it paused him.
Yep, several times.
Paused him a few times. And then that's when your confidence and your rhythm picked up. And then you continued to use overhand right and, got the TKO, and it was clear, it must have been a hell of a punch. But most guys in a ring, even including myself back in the day, it takes, I'm talking about real fights, not sparring, because sparring's different. Sparring,
different.
the guy's not trying to kill you, and there's not 1,000 people watching to make sure you get killed or the other guy kills. So sparring's a little different. But a real fight, sometimes it took me a year to figure out, so you learned very quickly in that second round. I'm assuming your brain was going into survival mode, and I was very impressed by that. Even though I didn't, you and I haven't liked each other for many years, it doesn't matter. I still respect the game of boxing and art. And both you and Lee went in there to really, I mean, you could tell you guys went in there to really fight, because there was some gossip going on that you guys might have been doing a setup to just do an exhibition.
He wanted to box you for many years. He wanted to box everyone.
Yeah. A couple years ago, I actually was going to do it for fun.
Why didn't you do it?
Because he stole one of my people. I was going to do it for fun. This was 2-3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And then one of my guys went to work for him that worked for me. And I didn't want to support his brand with a fun exhibition fight. That's the way I looked at it. It was going to be a fun exhibition fight, which would mean it had been a real fight. But it would have done something for charity or something. But when I think it was Mike or one of the guys went to work for my company, and then I thought, if someone's going to take some of my people, then I'm not going to go support their brand or mission. So I just kind of.
So that would happen, because BDR accepted it, and Besdom Roofer. So he wanted to. I remember he came to me like 3 years ago. Let's do this, and then he came to BDR. He wanted to fight everyone. It's just a promotion for him. But why did you decide to reach out after the fight?
I thought I wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you
for learning what you did very quickly in that second round, because it could have went a different way.
Oh yeah.
And I still wonder if he would have boxed instead of, he went for the knockout punch.
Yeah.
He was brawling, and he could have boxed. And I wonder how that fight would have played out if he would have boxed instead of going for the knockout. But you never know. Boxing, one lucky punch can change everything.
Exactly.
Your brain's not connected to anything. People forget that your brain's not connected to anything. And even though you're wearing headgear, people are like, you're wearing headgear.
It made it worse sometimes.
All the headgear does is protect you from bruising and maybe crushed bones, but your brain's floating in water.
Yeah.
And so the headgear actually makes your head bigger.
Yeah.
And so when you get hit, that hit is no different PSI than a straight punch. The only difference is you might not have a black eye as bad, but your brain is still taking that PSI. It's the same, and sometimes it could be worse. And so the knockout feeling of a punch with headgear is the same as a normal punch. And a lot of people that don't box don't understand that. So I thought you guys had a great fight. I think Mike Holmes was here and Dave Libertines. We were watching it. I said, you should tell Dimitri, tell him he did a good job. And, Lee did a good job too. You guys both did. But
yeah, 100%.
Being a novice guy.
I still haven't talked to him. I reached out.
Oh, really?
He never, yeah. I hugged him. I said, beef settled, whatever. I don't want anything else with that guy as far as like publicly or whatever. As a matter of fact, I decided to even remove like fake guru video. Like I want to take all the content out. Like he showed up, he stood for himself, because I see the change. I see that, I watched content after the fight and towards the end, I'm like, that guy is learning. He is stubborn. We all are, like in our different ways. But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be a bigger man. I'll remove the fake guru. I don't have to do it, but I'll do it just for the sake of it. And I'm not saying that, we'll never have arguments in the future.
Would you ever do a rematch with him?
I don't. There's no point. There's nothing to prove. I think it'll be stupid. Obviously, he probably will want a rematch. For me, I want to be done with this. I want to be done with the drama, because if we do a rematch, even if I lose, it'll be fine. But I guarantee you I will not lose. But if he lose second time, he'll be done. I think right now we both look good. He looks good with this fight. There's nothing else to prove. We're done. And with me removing all the negative content about him, even after I won, because my coach asked me, he said, what are you trying to accomplish with this? Besides want to win. And I said, I want to be a bigger man before and after the fight. And I want to show determination in the fight. like that, I can stand up for
How
myself.
long did you train before that fight? Like
4
hardcore?
months.
4 months.
Yeah.
So another thing people don't understand, but I do that 3-4 months before you get in a ring.
Nothing.
You don't think about anything but that. Like you don't do your normal work almost. You don't think about.
Well,
if you're really in training mode, you wake up. You're training.
People don't realize I watch hours and hours per. Like I watch interviews, podcasts, like your Mike Tyson's and stuff. Everything. Like I was consumed with it. Like I have 2 boxing coaches. I have 2 practices per day. I lived and breathed boxing for a couple months. How you do anything is how you do everything. That's why I won. Because I did not. My biggest problem was I did not want to win. I wanted to look good. I want to look decent for 4 months of training. And honestly, that 2 overhead, like I learned it like a week before. Like fun fact, I'm watching Bitter Beef Smith fight week before. So Saturday night, our fight is Saturday, and Saturday before Bitter Beef, Russian. He's from Chechnya, but he's Russian. So he fights. It's his 20th fight. He had 20 for 20 knockouts. He's like a champion, 175 pound, amazing fighter. And I'm watching that fight, and I got hooked on that guy because he throws 2. Like when someone tries to jab him, he goes 2 over, right? I'm mesmerized. I'm like, how does he do it? Come to my coach and say, teach me that. Like week before. Next 3 practices, all we do, he jabs me and I throw 2 over because we did not practice that shot. We did, your jab, your left hook, your upper. Like there's so many things in boxing. You have to have 2-3 shots that comes natural to you.
My favorite punch is always the left hook.
I love it too. And we practice it for like 3-4 months, but I never practiced the 2 over. And I said, teach me that. And we start doing it. We practice for the past 3 practices before the fight. That's the only thing I did. And then last 3 days I didn't do anything. And somehow it connected. Like my brain remembered because I saw him jabbing me, and I'm like, I have to do something with it. Usually I would do jab and in the return, but then somehow it was not connecting. And I tried my 2, and it worked. Actually, my number 1 punch that I trained for 4 months, it's 2 to the body. I heard everyone I sparred with, my coach says, you're gonna knock him out with a punch to the body. I knew he has weak core, and I have very strong 2 and 1. I did not throw 1 punch to the body in that fight, not single one. And the only thing I did was a 2 over that I learned like a week ago. It's crazy. But it connected. Like
it only takes one lucky punch sometimes to make.
It was. I think I got like 2, 3 in the last round, but total maybe like 10.
Yeah,
like it was mania. So let's get to your story. You remind me. I watched a lot of Mike Tyson actually, and as I'm watching, Patrick Bet-David did a few interviews with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson have changed, and he reminds me of you more than anyone. Like I was thinking of like Delmedico, who he is like as a category. I'm like, he's Mike Tyson. You have a wild past. You were crazy. Not only your parties, but the way you live your life. And now the way I see you, you're seeking peace. You're seeking something different. Like if you watch Mike Tyson, he still have that inner man that wants to come out. And Mike Tyson is like, no, you have to stay down. I watched recently his interview. He's like, my wife does not let me go to the clubs. I can't go to the clubs. And like, I'm a grown man. I cannot do what I want. And you can see that struggle. And he's still freaking Mike Tyson. Mm-hmm. But you can see he's a changed man. And when I think about you, that's what I see now. I actually talked to several people, and I want to touch on all of that today because, I don't care what you say about yourself. When I ask people about you, I'm like, did he really change? And, we'll touch on it. But first, let's start with your career. You started a lot of businesses. How many companies have you have total?
Started or now?
I would say, so you've been a business owner. That's your claim to fame, right? But total, how many businesses you've been involved that was 100% you?
Over the years, probably 15 to 20. I mean, you got to go back far. I mean, I had a valet company when I was in college. I had
always been an entrepreneur.
I had a promotion for nightclubs company when I was in college, helped promote bars in the local area. I had a company when I was 16. It wasn't a real company, but the first real company where I was actually making money is probably in college, a valet company. And then there were several companies I started over the years. A little security business once. different things.
Out of everything you've done, what are you the most proud of? What company have you built that you're the most proud of? I've done that and I'm proud for that.
I think, from a impact standpoint, there's a couple. I mean, WTS SVG, contrary to popular belief or an unpopular belief, made a big impact in the industry, bringing folks together, putting a spotlight on a storm restoration industry prior to that. So, I mean, I'm pretty proud of that. But there was other things. There were other businesses I did that didn't do well financially. 2008, 2009 during the recession, I launched a toy stand for kids. It's called the Little Green Money Machine. It was a multi-purpose business stand. It won awards. It came with a book. Lost $500,000 on there. I never produced enough revenue. I made the product in China, and I couldn't produce enough units in China to bring the cost down to an acceptable level to get it into big box retailers like Toys R Us. So, $500,000 into it, I pulled the plug on it. But it won awards, and it was a for the kids that did buy it and have it, it was a cool thing to help kids that were 8, 9, 10 years old launch their first business. So, I think all the businesses were something that I believed in or had fun with, but those two in particular made an impact.
What's the highest point of your career as far as revenue goes? Like what the year that you felt success? Was it storm chasing years when you were like, I made it this year, or I made it like the highest point of your career?
Yeah. The second year when I was a storm chasing salesman, I did really well as a salesman before I became an owner. Back 99, 2000, the second year in 2000, I made, I think I did close to 400,000 in sales commissions. That's the first time I made a good chunk of money. I came from
400,000 is a lot
of money.
A lot of business owners don't realize the earning potential of the sales rep versus the business owner.
Without the liability.
Yeah.
Now that next year I went and opened my own business like all sales guys do.
How much did you make for yourself when you did that?
Well, the first year in business, which was Abelard Construction in Minnesota, there wasn't really a storm. So it was kind of doing oddball jobs, and it wasn't a big storm year. But that second year, Columbus, Ohio got hit in 2002, April 2002. And we had gone there in the winter and set up a relationship with Able Roofing, which was like the $20 million retail company in town. And they were just happened to be launching a franchise division. And so when we came to them and said, hey, we want to be your franchise or your set or your joint venture partner, they're like, wow, this is wonderful. We're launching a franchise. And so Brian and I went to Columbus, and we did it was one of the few times I've actually done a joint venture, because I usually was Abelard Construction, but in that particular city, it made sense. And we did 25 million in that storm, which was over a year and a half. So I think it was 18 million the first year, 7 million on year two. That was the second year as a business owner. So I know that a lot of guys, you hear these crazy numbers, 50 million, 100 million. Look, back then, that was a lot of money. It was a lot of revenue. I learned a lot about.
But also prices were much cheaper. Like 25 million back then is like probably 60, 70 now.
Oh man, it was. But we grew so fast,
How much were you getting for roofs? Like $300 a square?
I was getting elk shingles. This was before GF bought elk,
like
for
36.
No, $36 a square. $36 a
What was the pricing? Like how much insurance paid altogether? 275 to 50?
Yeah, we were probably getting $400 or $500 a square.
Really?
Back then.
Back then?
And with overhead and profit and all that stuff. It depended on the claim.
Sure.
But we skyrocketed in Columbus, Ohio, and it was.
It's a good market.
Yeah.
Even to this day, there's so many big companies coming from there. I mean, they go elsewhere too, but Columbus High, it's a gem.
Well, one of the salespeople that I hired, he was a military buddy of mine that came back from overseas. His name was Leo Roberto. He came back from overseas. We put him in sales in Columbus, Ohio. He came up through sales. He ended up buying Fiesel Roofing, which is now one of the largest roofing companies in Columbus,
Ohio.
$200
million.
And now he's part of a PE capital group buying other companies. So when you think back to, there's been so many sales associates over the years that came through our umbrella or our companies.
All storm chasers do is breed competition, honestly.
Oh yeah.
But you guys bring it to yourself, because it's all 1099s. You don't really, the reason you guys do it because you train them to do everything, and then at one point sales rep
Well, I think
asking
I agree,
why
and
do
I
they need
agree
you?
and disagree though. I think even if you W-2'd them
Sure.
and tried to put a non-compete,
But
I
if you
think
don't have a leverage, if you door knock, if
the
you chase
human nature though of a 20, because the average sales associate for roofing restoration, storm or non-storm, is a guy in his 20s, early 30s, okay? And human nature is they're gonna migrate in 3 to 5 years, 2 to 3 years, no matter what you do. Humans been migrating for 250,000 years. So the thought that someone's gonna stay with you for 20 years or 10 years, that's not the right way to think as a business owner. You should assume that in 2 to 3 years, someone's gonna get the itch, someone's girlfriend's gonna move to Montana, someone's kids are gonna go over here, someone might wanna go do something else, someone might wanna become an entrepreneur, and you have to accept the fact that people are gonna migrate. So I think that's okay. And I think one of the reasons I launched SVG later on, by the way, because I saw we're creating so much competitors over the years, or guys learning a system, go starting a business, I'm like, why not just go help them all? And so when Brian and I split up in 2012 with Abelard, we went our separate ways. He was actually here a couple weeks ago, first time we talked in 10 years.
Wow.
Saw each other. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
You making up a whole bunch of connections.
Oh yeah, we hadn't seen each other in 10 years. So he was here
Wow.
the night before you fought. But when him and I parted in 2013, I didn't want to get back into brick and mortar contracting. I was kind of you get exhausted from it, from the people leaving, from the storm chasing and all that stuff. And I launched SVG because I'm like, might as well join them, meaning help everybody. And that's kind of one of the reasons we launched SVG back in the day was basically to help not sales associates but entrepreneurs launch, grow, scale, move into the storm the storm restoration industry, and how to navigate the insurance claim world and all that kind of stuff. So
let's talk about your record. So in your book, you claim $179 million in sales. Is it Abelard? So 18 states, 18 years.
Abelard Construction, not 18 years, 2001 to 2013, so 12 years.
12 years.
We averaged 15 to 17 million a year. Maybe one year we had 25 million.
What was the best, the worst markets for you?
Minnesota was a good market throughout different years. We were primarily storm restoration, not retail. So Minnesota, when there was a storm. Chicago, back in the day, was very good. Northwest suburbs, made a lot of money.
What's your take on Chicago now?
Well, all these markets are now saturated with storm restoration contractors. So when I was there in the early 2000s, it wasn't like that. Columbus, Ohio, nobody knew what a storm chaser was. In 2002, it didn't exist in Columbus, Ohio. We called that a virgin market.
So would you say that market is oversaturated now?
Oh yes, very much so. I think most people agree with that. I mean, I might be part of the reason that happened by launching, the book, Win the Game, and in the SVGU. But when you go in there we went to Columbus, Ohio, and made such an impact there. People leave, they start businesses. Other people saw what we did, they learned. Naturally, when you have a big storm or a big hailstorm, then you're going to have storm contractors, even local ones, that start understanding the storm restoration model. But Columbus will never be like it was in 2002, because even by 2005, it was getting a little saturated. It's much more saturated now. Same with Atlanta. When we went to Atlanta in 2008 and opened up, it was Brian and I there as well. Really not a lot of storm restoration contractors in Atlanta in 2008, just maybe 2 or 3 in the whole city that we even knew. And now you go to Atlanta and there's hundreds, there's literally hundreds of contractors that are primarily on the storm restoration model. So we liked going to cities that were fun, cosmopolitan cities like that, using the storm model for Abelard, and really doing some research. Like, we never went to Dallas, Texas. We're like, no way would we go there.
Why?
Too much competition. It was already, because even in the early 2000s, Dallas, Texas was just like it is today. It was full. That's where storm chasing came from. So it's very hard for a guy from Minnesota to go down with a sales team in Dallas and compete in Dallas, Texas. I mean, that's a very competitive market. Now there's guys that have done it, more power to them, just not for us. We preferred to find cities that weren't very saturated with storm restoration contractors. So we liked, Columbus, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky back 2010, St. Louis in the early days, 2001, 2002, first time a big storm hit, St. Louis, Chicago, northwest suburbs of Chicago. I mean, there was a couple players there, but not like today. I mean, now there's hundreds. There's literally hundreds in those cities. But back then, we'd find Chantilly, Virginia was another one. You know, Maryland.
Yeah.
That's still what I call a virgin
it's a good
territory.
market.
Yeah, it's a good market. You know, it's almost.
I see a lot of companies scale super fast.
It's almost recession-proof there because we had an office there during the recession, did very well because you got retired generals, you got all the politicians that retire. They tend to stay there in Montgomery County and Washington, D.C., you know, and they still have money. So even that's a great retail market out there. But when we went there in 2009, 2010 with a storm restoration model, again, not a little hailstorm hit, went there, thought, wow, what a great market. A lot of big homes there in Montgomery County and Bethesda, Maryland, and D.C. And so we tended to go to places that were not so saturated with storm, and then we wanted to keep the brand. The idea was to keep the brand there and grow, and that's the way we used to grow our.
Why didn't you sell your business? Like times is different now. I'm pretty sure you're looking at it now. Like if you would do it all.
We tried twice.
You tried.
Yeah, we tried in 2006. We were in Orlando, Florida. We moved our headquarters there because of Hurricane Charlie, 2004. We went through a reverse. We got an offer from a publicly traded company. It was a reverse shell merger company. It was a penny stock company from Dallas, Texas, actually. And we went through the whole process of due diligence, blah, blah, blah. Come to find out it was a pump and dump scheme. And I didn't really like the players. This is one of the reasons Brian and I got in our first big argument was actually in 2006. He was all about the reverse shell merger IPO and the buyout. I was very skeptical because something didn't seem right, and it literally almost ripped our company apart because we were already transferring resources and people over this company, and finally I ended up signing the LOI, and sure enough, a couple months later, it all fell apart because it was a pump and dump scheme, and then we had to reassemble the company. It was a mess. Oh yeah, horrible. So that was my first experience with trying to sell your company. Fast forward to 2012, 2013, when him and I had gone to Australia for 3 months and done a joint venture operation out there, lost $250,000 on that, but it was fun. You know, we went out there with 10 sales associates.
How is the market in Australia?
Oh, it's great for hail. It's just like Texas.
Really?
Hail's like this big, yeah.
But how is the insurance companies and stuff?
Very socialist. So they're very much like Canada. They use a preferred contractor system. We were the first ones to introduce this idea of a contingency agreement and knocking a door. People don't knock doors out there. It doesn't, you know, if somebody files a claim, a preferred contractor shows up from the insurance company. So they don't have to use the preferred contractor in Australia. They can use their own contractor, but it's just nobody ever heard of that before. So we were very disruptive over there, and they were very excited for us to leave. When my visa ended, they made sure I couldn't come back there. But you know, we did leave some sales guys back there. There's still a couple guys that live there today that are selling for some company.
So
but
you come back, what happened to your company?
I came back, and me and my old business partner had irrevocable differences.
He's still in business?
He's still in business, Indiana.
Okay.
Doing well, yeah. Restore is his company now. But we had just, you know, it had been going on for probably a year or two. I think when you've been business partners with somebody for 10 years, 12 years, you know, it's like a marriage. You're talking about we had 50-50 LLCs. We never did an op agreement because we were best buddies. When you're going like this in business, everything's going great, you're best friends. But when you have differences of opinion, maybe when business slows down, that's when sometimes the friendships don't hold up like they do in the heydays. And when you decide to sell your company, that's a very good point. How do you sell your company when you and a business partner are no longer talking, or you're having irrevocable differences? You're like, hey, I just don't agree with you anymore, and you stop talking, and you don't have an op agreement, which is a buy-sell agreement. What do you do when you break up? We didn't have that because we always got along. There's only one thing to do after that.
Close the company.
Dissolve. You can't sell a company that somebody owns unless you buy it from the other person. And so what we did is we, in 2012, 2013, he had 5 states under his control. I had 5 states under mine. We built the rest of the jobs, closed down operations. He went and launched, I think it was Restore. And I made a decision not to get back in brick and mortar because I was just you get that angst and that anger, and I was going through a lot of stuff at the time, and that's why I launched SVG, just to move in a different direction.
Is storm chasing really a sellable business model? I see a lot of equity firms coming in, and some equity would only buy retail, some do invest in, storm chasing. But I also see a lot of storm chasers, try to sell, but after the due diligence, after looking at their books, they don't have a sellable business. Even biggest players, like even companies like CMR, right, 100 million, like plus $50 million companies.
Well, they should have sold a year ago.
They should have. But what's the business? Because you have all this sales guys.
Yeah, because it's funny. We just had an exit strategy boot camp in here, and there were some different business owners. There were some contractors here, but one of the things these PE groups are looking for that a lot of storm restoration contractors can't provide is consistent growth.
3-year growth.
And so even when I was a stormer, the only way for us to keep out of we call it the bell-shaped curve. When Minnesota slows down, there's no storm for 2 years, and you don't like retail, what are you going to do? You have to chase the next storm to pick up that bell-shaped curve. If you're really, really, really good at that, and we were pretty good for 10 years. I mean, we were on the road. You have to be on the road perpetually to do this.
They have to
You
travel.
can keep your EBITDA and your moving average up. But most of the PE groups that are buying these companies right now, like Sam Struthers and in these different groups, they're still not interested in this. What they're interested in is a guy like Scott Ropel in Denver.
Yeah.
Okay. He was a storm chaser back in the day, and he understands storm restoration, but he's really a storm catcher. Storm catcher is somebody he didn't really leave Denver. He has a steady business in Denver. He's got licenses in other states, but he wasn't really chasing all those places. He's really focused on his business in Denver, which included multifamily, retail, and the storm restoration model.
So you have to diversify.
Yeah, I think so when you hear about these, because I've talked to some of these guys at Exit Strategy, they like the storm restoration model because it's explosive in revenue for a little bit, but they like the company who's also embedded in retail too. They don't necessarily like the storm restoration contractor that has to move from state to state to state. That's not what they're buying. They're looking for the storm catcher type that understands storm restoration, but also has a book of retail business or something steady they can sink their teeth into.
What's your take on all the equity money that comes in the industry right now?
I think it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's insane.
Look, 10 years ago, like when I went through that reverse shell merger in 2012, Brian and I, when we did talk, we did for a minute try to sell to a company. I just forgot about that. We did try to sell at one time to a company. Our financials weren't right.
Yeah.
For the reasons we just talked about, for them to sink their teeth into it, and then we ended up going into the other mode. But I think it's crazy. The last 3 years really
insane
is when it's
billions
exploded.
and billions of dollars. But they also see not only good, so they come in. I mean, they pretty much want to buy everyone. So every company gets 5-10 offers. Like if you're doing a couple $1 million a year, you get offers, right? Like, but then it's a soft offers. It's not really an offer. It's like, oh, we want to buy you. Open the books. You open the books. Now they don't want to. But what I see is they buy the companies, and then a year later they sell them back.
There you go. So there's a game of chess going on, and the one is the big PE groups that want the perfect 30, 40, $50 million roofing company with retail business, perfect books.
Yeah.
That's like Jason Berg's group up there, All-Star Morgan Stanley, okay?
Yep.
If you don't fit that model, they're not going to buy you. So they're very, very, very picky. So there's a couple players like that, big ones, okay? But most companies are not like that. Now there's a sub-chess group going on, and that's smaller funds and smaller groups and smaller PE groups and some even individuals that are buying, I don't want to say shitty companies, but they're buying companies that look like they're okay. They're not like that yet. They need some help, and they're buying them at a discount, and they're throwing in some resources and tools to help them grow, so that they can possibly get to a level to be bought out by the other company. And that's actually that's a good place to play in.
Yeah.
I wish I would have, in 2012, I wish I would have had one of those companies approach me, but nobody wanted to touch those companies. Yep. There's a huge game of people doing that underneath the bigger groups. And there's even companies that are, I don't want to say their names, that they're going right after the salespeople and offering them deals. Because really, if let's say you're a storm restoration contractor, retail contractor, look, you got production, you got accounting, you got a brand, and you're running that well. The bigger group, the bigger company that's 50 million, or the PE group, already has all that in place, and it's probably way better than what you're doing. This comes a smaller company. So what do you really have to offer that PE
Sales
group?
guys.
The sales guys. And so they're making offers
Top
to this
producers.
company owner, but if he doesn't nibble on it, they're like, you know what? We'll just go after all their salespeople. Cash bonuses, sign up, da-da-da-da, and they take their whole sales team. That's going on by at least 4 or 5 different groups right now. And I think it's pretty vicious, but if you're a sales guy, it's a pretty good deal, I guess. You know, you get a bonus, you come on, they match your commission rate. So there's that game going on. So there's a game with, there's a game of check. I call that the checkers side. That's the checkers level, going after the salespeople. Then you got a little a light chess going after the small players that need help, that are getting really they probably really need cash, and they're buying at a discount for that geographical license, and they're going to flush some resource money and blow it up and then probably flip it. And that's a great deal for a struggling contractor or a guy that just can't get off the gate to ever get to that level to sell. That's really the place to play in, I think, is those smaller the smaller PE groups and funds and some of the individuals that are willing to buy the struggling company. That could really help some guys out.
In the storm restoration business, we always talk about millions and millions in sales and how great profit margins are, and that's what attracts all of the competition. Share a dirty little secret, because you know all the insights. Why so many big companies lose money and go bankrupt? And I'm talking about Abel in Atlanta, $60 million company. If you hear about it all the time, like Excel, $25 million company, just a couple of years ago folded. Why these companies, despite the fact that they're doing freaking crazy numbers, 50, 60, 70 million, close the doors, can't pay debt, cannot pay suppliers?
It's actually easy. So take the word 50 million. So right away on 50 million, we know that, let's use 50 million. So we know 1/3 labor, 1/3's going to labor, 1/3's going to material, but it's actually more than 1/3 material because material price has gone up. It's material's actually much higher than labor. It used to be 1/3, 1/3. So they're already losing right out the gate without overhead. They're already losing more than 2/3.
Not losing,
straight
they're
cost.
spending.
And then they got profit coming. Now you got overhead, you got marketing, you got all this stuff. If you don't know how to manage that cash flow, and
So it's just money management.
I got an MBA from Carlson, University of Minnesota. So you'll learn enough to talk good, but you learn a little bit about cash flow and financial management. Let me tell you, those years running Abelard, there were many, many, many times where, storm or no storm, it's Thursday afternoon, and I'm wondering how the hell I'm going to make payroll tomorrow. So when you say 25 million, you could say, at a $25 million a year, but you could be in March, and you just happen to pay a lot of material bills and pay this and pay that. Maybe you got one little.
What do you do in that situation? Like, how often did it happen to you on a Thursday you don't have money for Friday?
Well, I could, 15, 20 times over a 10-year period for sure.
So what do? Sell personnel assets?
No, you just
negotiate.
You get creative. You operate in a float. You learn how to operate in a float. The float means that you got receivables of $300,000 maybe sitting out there. You go, okay, guys, we're gonna go pick up some money. We got $300,000 sitting out there. People owe us. Saturday morning, we are meeting in the office. Here's all the checks. We're writing all the checks, paychecks on Friday, but there's no money in the bank. So we better hope we get it in by Monday. So you take a group effort. You put your sales guys in on Saturday morning. You go knock on Mrs. Smith's door. Hey, I'm holding that $13,000 check because my gutter's got a dent in it. I'll give you $500 off your thing. And so you teach your sales guys how to collect money, or you get your AR manager, but you focus on your AR.
Team effort.
And sometimes these companies let their AR go, or they let their sales guys collect the check. Worst thing in the world is let your salesman manage your AR as a company. A lot of companies do that. I used to too in the beginning. And you've learned how to follow.
Why is it a problem?
Well, because I was a salesperson, so and I prided myself when I was a salesperson on collecting and closing my own jobs out. And a lot of guys in the industry, they allow their salesmen to collect and close their jobs out. And a salesman should go help pick up a check. But you should always, once you get over 2 or 3 million in sales as a company, especially by 5 million, you should have a dedicated accounts receivable manager that's watching your lean clock, that knows when last trade's complete, because that's when your 90 days starts, that's sending out those invoices, that's going after the insurance claim, release depreciation, or just invoicing your retail customer. Because if you leave it up to Johnny, and let's say Johnny just got a $6,000 or $10,000 commission check on Friday, and he's going to Mexico for 2 weeks, do you think going to pick up that $13,000 check from the other customer that's mad, or that customer doesn't like them. So when you times that by 10 states and 100 salespeople, you could have a massive AR problem by having your salesmen be in charge of AR and collections by themselves. Whereas if you have a dedicated accounts receivable department or manager, just like any big company, you have to, especially with lean clocks, you got to monitor your lean clock. So what I'm telling you is, I don't think what I just told you is anything. A lot of guys don't talk openly about that, but I bet anybody in contracting has experienced a Wednesday or Thursday where like, 100%. Oh shit, I got to make a couple of calls. I'm not going to be able to pay this bill,
and I wonder like a failure too.
How am I going to pay my team? I mean, when you really experience that, that's when you become better at cash flow management. And so a lot of that has to do with accounts receivable, and some of that has to do with just cash flow management. Sometimes guys spend too much money on themselves.
The owners.
I spent a lot of money over the years on silly things. Some of the things you touched on in a couple of your YouTube videos, we can talk about that later. Well, I lived a very extravagant lifestyle. Now, I always put business first, so I never well, did Brian and I buy a 45-foot yacht and carver and motorcycles and boats? Yeah, we did all that in Columbus, Ohio, but you know what? We had the money to. The money was flowing.
Did you ever have people steal from you?
Oh yeah. I've had all kinds of theft.
Give me a crazy. I'll start with one. You touched on sales guys getting commissions. I have a sales guy who started his own company. I fired him. Long story short, I actually took him to small claims later, won the case, but 6 months later, it was my first tough summer. Same thing. Friday, don't have $50K for the payroll. I did not know where the money is going. 6 months later, January, lady comes to the office, say, hey, Dmitry, I've never paid you guys. You did the work and stuff. I take the check, open the QuickBooks, and I see that QuickBooks payment has been recorded. So this, imagine sales guy, and it was my fault, my mistake. I let the salespeople access to QuickBooks to collect the checks.
Oh,
so he collected it, so he can so he can get $500 freaking commission. Imagine, but without collecting the check. But the homeowner was honest enough to bring the check 6 months later. I guess the check was burning them. It was insurance claim. They're like, I can't live with it. So that's how I found out what the sales guy was doing. And for me, like, who would do stuff like that?
I've had several sales thefts, but the worst theft we ever had, and I'll go back to Brian. One of the reasons him and I split up was due to this issue here. But we hired a accounts payable manager, CFO, a lady by the name of Beckie, in 2010, 2011. And she ran some of our accounting on Brian's offices. She's now in prison. Her name's Beckie. She came from Tecta, one of those big roofing companies.
Yeah.
So she seemed like a very trustworthy accounting type person.
Accountants are the worst. And the family accountants, even the worst.
I was gonna say, if any roofing contractors are watching us right now, always, I'll just tell you one little thing, always have a third party or someone other than who's writing your checks and running your QuickBooks it's called month-end reconciliations.
It's so easy to steal too.
And there's people that'll do that. A separate person should be month-end, because whether it's your girlfriend, your wife, your best friend, your auntie, the innocent lady.
They'll pay their credit cards. They'll get so creative.
I mean, you always got to do month-end reconciliations, because sometimes there's a lot of theft, and especially in the contracting industry. And there's a lot of theft on the salesperson side, but the bigger problem is actually the one you don't know about. It's the accounting ones. And it could be a third-party accounting company, which is why you always have another third party do month-end reconciliations, because they catch everything. And it only costs a couple $100 a month to have another company do this. They just do a month-end, maybe it's $500 a month. But very important. Now, this gal, Beckie, she's now in prison, by the way. She had set up fake subcontractors that look like, when you see checks going through for like Julio Chavez or whatever, or Juan Lopez, and you're used to seeing that name. So you see 10, 15, 20, 30 grand going to Juan Lopez, you're used to, he's your subcontractor. You're just used to it. So she set up something like Juan Lopez 1 or Juan Lopez -2 or something, LLC, some bank account. And she was literally writing, bilking a company tens of thousands, maybe a couple $100,000, maybe it was into the hundreds of thousands. And eventually Brian caught it on his office. But these are I knew there was something going on like that at the time. This is one of the reasons him and I actually broke up, was because of that issue. She's now in prison. But at the time, when you're going through financial pain like that, you start thinking a lot of thoughts like, well, maybe my partner's in on her, maybe this or maybe that. It caused a lot of angst. And now she finally got in trouble for that. But all I can tell you guys is, she got caught. What if she wouldn't have got caught?
Yeah, I just interviewed India Roofing Company, and same thing, $50,000, $70,000. Those are very common.
Yeah.
If you watch American Greed, they have a lot of similar stories.
Now, this on the sales side, I've experienced all of the stuff, like where the guy has a homeowner write a check in his name for overhead and profit, or somebody that's handling a credit card for VIP tickets a couple years ago for Win the Storm. Well, my people back in the day handled a lot of credit card transactions. Well, they zipped the card through their own personal thing. We just found out about it later for a couple of you. It's $3,000, but those are small in comparison to the accounting side stuff that happened, in 2012. But yeah, it's something you got to really do your checks and balances on your.
How many times? How often? Out of give me a percentage. Out of 100 jobs, how often contractors don't get paid, and what do you do when you're not getting paid? When homeowner spend insurance money, doesn't want to write a check, or 1%, 2%, 3%?
I think it's, for some guys, and this is always the case. Like for me, back in the day when I was a contractor, maybe 2 out of 100. Okay, as a contractor, we were very good at one thing that we were good at, and it was probably me. On accounts receivable, once you have a cash flow problem, you don't ever want to have that again. So lien and getting that lien in and sending a certified letter of a threat to lien, at 45 days instead of 90. We were very aggressive at getting our money in, and most of the people liked us that we dealt business with, customers. But no matter how good you are, you're always going to have a percentage of customers that don't want to pay you and will find out how to not pay you. And in that case, you got to rely on lien law, because lien is powerful if executed right. Someone might only owe you $10,000 and you have a $500,000 home. And if you file a lien, okay, you'll say, well, they got to sell the home. You can foreclose that lien. And that means if you move to foreclose a lien, you don't just file the lien, you moved it right after you file a lien, go move to foreclosure. And when they get that letter that they got to go to arbitration and they might lose their house, they magically come up with $10,000 somehow. So, but you got to understand your lien times and your lien law. And so I think these days, there's a lot of education and a lot of these new young bucks that are coming up. They've copied the contingency agreement and the sales process from the other company, and they really didn't copy the production, especially the accounts receivable side. And if they did copy it, they're getting a bad copy from the boss who got a bad copy from the boss from before him, meaning a lot of guys don't dial in their accounts receivable stuff like they should. And if they did, even how you set your contracts up like if you did any kind of job, even residential over 50 grand, you should set up progress payments. You should have percentage of completion billing policy, which means you have the right to collect at any stage of the job based on percentage of work complete. That's just like they do in big commercial contracts. You don't always exercise it, but if you have these clauses in your contract, it could save you from a cash flow crisis by being able to legally exercise that if you needed to, especially on large jobs, instead of doing half down and half upon completion. So a lot of times AR has to do with the way progress payments are set up. And so when you hear these stories about, and I love Steve Soule, he's a great guy, but when you hear these stories about CMR and these other big companies going out of business, like how are they doing 50 or 100 million? How do they go out of business? It could have been 10 contracts, 50% down, 50% when completed. And just those 5 out of those 10 contracts, maybe they're $1 million contracts, they're not getting that other 50% for something silly or stupid. And it's stretching out for months, and all of a sudden they just ran out of money because of those. I know
you're close with this, Steve, since you brought him up. What do you think, like their biggest problem? Do you think, you can get out of the whole, like estimation is $50-70 million in debt on $170 million a year, but now you have big reputational damage because the reviews. I
don't know that. I've heard that they ran into some problems. All I can tell you is Steve, I've known for years, since maybe 2001. I mean, long time. He's an honest guy with integrity. I think you can act in your best capacity, and you can still run into cash flow problems. And when you delegate to people, and they were running a big operation, you have all these managers underneath you. At some point, unfortunately, humans that work for the owner are making decisions too. And things can catapult really quickly, especially in cash flow game. I don't know the situation there to be able to comment on that, but I can tell you that the best companies can run into cash flow problems. And it's not always, sometimes, yeah, it's making dumb decisions with money. Sometimes it's just not managing your cash flow right. And I'd say when the bigger contracts you have on commercial contracts and you're dealing with insurance litigation, waiting now to get paid through appraisals and litigation like here in Florida, and the Senate bills that passed and making it very difficult now to take on insurance claims down here. Hell, I'm still waiting to get me. I'm like, I know everything about insurance and PAs and everything about Senate bills here. I'm still waiting to get paid out the last $300,000 or $400,000 on this claim. I exhausted everything. And that's farmers. They're actually a good carrier here in Florida. So what I'm saying is, I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things, but even non-storm, a big retail contractor can run into problems. It all depends on how they're set up to, with their cash flow management, their AR and their AP cycles, and what they're spending their money on. So, I can't comment on that particular deal,
Sure.
But he's a good guy.
That everybody says that, and I agree with it. And they definitely have a good reputation. It just, when you get to those sizes, like 100, 150, 200 million, the amount of people that are affected by it, homeowners who are not getting roofs, sales guys, like all the vendors. I mean, it's Florida. Someone can go to jail here for that. Like, it's so regulated because, we're not talking about, little things. I mean, people reach out to us now because of all the lawyer stuff, all the checks, and people don't want them to do the work, and they try to collect a 25% cancellation fee. So it's a big problem.
No, at the end of the day, you can only go to jail if you perform a criminal action. So there's a lot of gossip and hush smile out there, even in Florida. You'd have to go to jail, you'd have to actually perform something criminal in nature, meaning shifted $10 million into an account overseas or something that should have been used for a homeowner's project. So you can't go to jail for having a cash flow management issue or problems under your control. So, innocent until proven guilty is what I say.
Oh, 100%. And I'm not talking about, like, every time you take the money from the homeowner,
yeah,
and you don't do the work.
Yeah, but businesses go out of business all the time. I mean,
of course,
you don't necessarily go to jail for that.
But Florida is very tough on it,
Yes,
like
it
on the
is.
contractors,
Yes,
on the
it is.
contractors.
Yes,
That's
it
what
is.
I'm saying.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
if it's because I have a guy in Chicago. He had 3 months in jail over $1,000. Maybe he needed a good lawyer, but he has a felony charges before, and he has a track record.
If you took money from a homeowner down here and just didn't come back and complete the work, and you have no justification, yeah, you should probably go to jail. But if you took a deposit from a homeowner and you had liabilities over here and lawsuits and cash flow problems, and your business literally sucked up that money and you didn't do anything, you can't go to jail for that. That's just called bad business management. Two different worlds. One is civil and one is criminal.
But then everybody can do it. Everybody can steal money and say, I just mismanaged it. Well, actually, what's funny? We ran a story here in Florida. So the guy got in the news. So small contractor got like 3-4 deposits. Actual news anchor followed him and got a comment from him. He's like, I didn't do nothing bad. I didn't spend money on myself. But he took money from 3-4 jobs. Very small guy. Didn't do the work. Those 3-4 homeowners went to sheriff departments, tried to open the cases up. They would not open. They would not prosecute him. And this news lady was so after him. It's like, how is it right? Like, he is stealing from more people. He keeps doing it. And the guy was like, I'm just broke. What I'm broke. I need this money to live. And they finally put him in jail.
If he's taking money and not doing any kind of work, then he should probably go to jail for sure. I think that whole look. I think any industry has some bad apples,
of course,
and I think overall in the roofing industry and the storm industry, there's like the guy you just mentioned. It's a very small percentage, I think.
100%.
Because it's very hard to do that and not get in trouble in, let's say, Florida. Okay, does it happen? Sure, it happens all over the country, and it happens from the vacuum clean sales, the guy that sells vacuum cleaners door to door. I mean, every industry has its bad apples. I think if you're looking at the storm industry though, I don't think it's any greater than any other industry. I think it's just a couple bad apples. I think it just gets a lot of attention because of the money and the insurance claims, and the insurance companies like to pump a lot of attention on the one bad apple. But if you really look at if you want to hear the real crime here in Southwest Florida, just drive here to Naples and look around at all the unfinished roofs and messed up roofs that are still sitting here, like my property here. Now I'm fortunate I was able to cash flow this thing, but imagine if I wasn't. I can't, there's people still not living in their homes down here, and there's insurance companies not paying.
What's your take on this crisis? So we have quite a few players. You have lawyers, you have public adjusters, you have contractors. You mentioned that we have too many contractors. Do we have too many public adjusters? Do we have too many lawyers in the game?
You don't have too many contractors here.
Not in Florida.
In the rest of the country you do.
Yeah.
I would tell you that there's very few contractors. This is a ghost town of contractors. Most of the storm restoration contractors pulled out of here 6 months ago.
Yeah, after they built past.
Oh yeah. There's just some local guys here now. There's really no stormers here, even in Southwest.
Do you agree what lawyers were doing here? Where are you on that issue? Like lawyers taking every claim to.
Well, it's again a couple bad apples in every industry. I mean, if you set up if every claim was an assembly line of litigation, and there were some people that were doing that, where every claim, if it had one loose tile, because Florida's got some of the best homeowner protection laws in the country. If you do have discontinued tile, you have matching law here. You got the 25% repair rule that they try to change, but if it was out of code prior to May 1st, 2009, you still got the 25% repair rule. So you got 25% repair rule, you got matching law, and you got discontinued product. So when you add all those things together, it's very easy to get some wind-blown tile approved for full replacement. Okay. When that becomes easy, what happens is, you're using those codes and those statutes as a reason to get the entire roof approved. Now, did a hurricane blow through and knock off 5 tile? Yes. If you apply matching law, discontinued tile, and it's out of code, does the whole roof have to replace under those things? Yes. Okay, so that happened, and that made something. Back 10 years ago, this was going on since 2008, since code change. It's good for a contractor here when you can use those things to your advantage. But what happens where you take it too far is when you're going to that house over there and it's got a relatively newer roof or 5-year-old roof, and it's got one loose tile, right? And it's going to be a fight because it's not the 25% repair rule, but they just happen to not make that tile anymore, but you could probably put the one tile in. And that's immediately going to litigation the next day after you sign it. And now hundreds of those like that are going in. Now that pissed off the carriers here, that did. And that's resulted in Senate Bill 2A, 2B, 2D, I can't remember them all. And now the insurance companies took that situation and then created this much worse situation now for homeowners here, where they're not honoring claims, and there's not a lot of recourse that like there used to be here to create that assembly line. So yeah, it's a domino effect that got worse all the way up. But at the very end of the day, now here there's a lot of homeowners that are not getting the protection and coverage and payments that they should here, because now the insurance companies in the Senate bills who bribed, or I should say put a lot of lobby dollars into DeSantis and his cohort there, the CFO, I can't remember his name, Petronas. And they went, what those Senate bills have destroyed the homeowners' ability here to go after their insurance companies and give the insurance companies a free ride. So now it's much worse here.
In your years of as a contractor, how often did you use lawyers? How often did you use public adjusters or any third party?
I never used any lawyers or public adjusters. This claim here was the first time I used a public adjuster. Back in the day, I never used AOBs either. We just used the contingency agreement.
Sure.
And quite honestly,
do you recommend contractors to use them now? One contractor really needs a lawyer or public adjuster?
If you can find a really good one and you have a very complicated claim on your hands, and someone, let's say you're a new company or you're a new sales guy and you don't know how to write $1 million claim, like be honest with you, on this claim here, and this log cabin, this property, I could write the roof all day and the gutters and the soffits and, probably even get some sub bids for the windows. When you get into the bathroom remodels here and the plumbing and the electrical, that stuff was like Chinese to me. And when I bought this house, I bought it with an assignment of claim, which was a risky move. It means I took on the onus of the claim. And so I had a window of time period to try to get this claim settled. I couldn't write that claim in Xactimate, I'll be honest with you, and I didn't trust many people to do it. So I did use a PA to write this claim because of all the extensive interior damage. And because I was nervous and thought that because I bought the house with the assignment of claim, that farmers might not acknowledge me on a phone, and maybe I should use a PA because of all these Senate bills. But that was the first time I ever used a PA. And over the years when I was a contractor, we didn't even know what a PA was the first 10 years when I was a contractor. Nobody knew what a public adjuster was. That all came later after.
It's just funny to watch.
After we launched SVG, we connected all those people.
I know, but and that's the thing. Like SVG became, and all the conferences, like all the PAs come there, and it's a big industry. And when you need one, you need one. Like I'm pretty sure you're grateful for one here, but PAs hate to hear that you need them on 1 out of 100 claims or 2. You
do not need them on. Yeah, you only need them on 1 out of 100. Look, and the PAs, I hope some public adjusters are watching this right now. There is not enough public adjusters in America to handle all the claims. The average claim size in America is not $50,000 or $100,000. It's $10,000. It's less than $10,000. The average homeowner's claim, somebody looked a couple of years ago, was $8,600. It's probably $10,000. Okay, most PAs won't touch a claim under 50 grand. 80-90% of all homeowner claims,
large claims,
millions and millions and millions of claims are $8,000 to $10,000, $15,000. If you look at the state of Texas, for example, take Texas. I think if you looked up how many licensed public adjusters in the state of Texas, I think I'm just taking a wild guess, 837 last time. That was a couple of years ago. Maybe there's 900 in the state of Texas. In 2016, remember that big storm that hit Dallas and San Antonio?
Yeah.
500,000 homeowners were hit overnight with hail that had sizable 3-inch hail claims, real claims, all around 20, 25, 30 grand. If you took those 900 PAs and put them all in Dallas, there's no way they could handle that many claims. So it's preposterous to think that a PA could be on every claim. Now, first of all, they don't want them all. They only want the bigger ones, most of them. Second of all, none of them are set up to scale to even run a McDonald's of claims handling that would be required to handle millions and millions.
Is it a
good
business to be a public adjuster?
Oh, well, it's a regulated, licensed business that allows someone to interface with the insurance company, write estimates, and then create a financial funnel back to their. I think it'd be a great business to be a PA if you're in the right market and had the right type of claims, because you're getting paid directly by the insurance carrier. That's power. It's very powerful. If a contractor handling claims, I mean, contractors would love to be paid directly by the carrier. So the one thing about being a PA is they always know they're going to get paid for their work because that money is flowing to them from the carrier, just like an attorney. I think that's attractive. If I was going to be a PA, that's an attractive. If that wasn't the case, I don't think there'd be many PAs because you'd be chasing your money from the homeowner.
PAs versus supplement companies. Like, do you need to supplement every claim?
I'm the personal belief that you should have somebody in your office that understands how to write an estimate, okay? Before you outsource. I've always said that. Now I've been a lot of my back in the day exhibitors, supplement companies, Troy Clymer, Balance Claims, PAs are my friends, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't use any of those services until you, as the owner, really you owners, should know how to write an estimate, and if there's a legitimate supplement, send a supplement to the insurance company. And then you delegate when you're busy. You should know how to do that yourself because that's your profit center. And then if you get so busy that you can't do it yourself anymore, you should then sub it out to a supplementing company. A PA should only be used in certain situations, a very complex and chaotic claim. Unfortunately, the whole supplementing industry blew up because the insurance company started short paying, as a group, started short paying certain things on claims. It was almost like a textbook, not paying for flashing, not paying for this. And you have to go through this process to get these things paid, or incurred costs, or Ice and Water Shield Minnesota. You have to actually show that you put it on and submit a supplement to get your Ice and Water Shield back as an incurred cost in many times in Minnesota. So by doing these things, the insurance company actually helped create the necessity of a supplement industry, because most contractors don't want to sit and have to send this crap into insurance companies over and over again. But I still believe that everybody should have somebody in their offices that knows how to do this. This is fundamental to running a business, is your accounts receivable and your ability to write an estimate. And the problem I've seen in the last 10 years, I might be the one that caused it with the WTS and SVG, supplement companies and PAs, but most of these guys set up and they're really good in sales. And they didn't get the right blueprint for production, accounting, let's say, of supplementing, which is really part of accounts receivable. And they have to sub out because they never learned how to do it, and they never mastered it. They couldn't train anybody in their own company how to do it, and the only resource is them to go to a supplementing company, unfortunately. and that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a lot of reasons why it's there, but you should probably use a supplementing company before a PA, because a PA should only be used if you have a gregarious, complicated claims. A supplementing company, I look at as really a third-party accounts receivable billing company that's maybe a little better than you. It's sending some stuff over to the carrier, but I think you should learn how to do it yourself first and then outsource when necessary.
One of the things I never agreed with you is like you have this saying that sales fix everything. Do you still believe that sales fix everything?
Revenue. That's not necessarily sales by itself. Revenue, which concludes accounts receivable and cash flow, I still believe not everything. It can't fix your heart. But in business, no, you could have a cash flow management problem, accounts receivable problem, okay, and you got to go fix those problems and get people to help you in those areas. So, but the best way out of those problems tomorrow is to create new revenue. Remember I told you that story when I said, hey, what do you do on Thursday when you wake up and you're like, you're writing checks and the money's not in your account? Well, shit, everybody's going to show up Saturday morning and go solve an accounts receivable issue, which leads to revenue, because revenue can make that problem go away. So when I say that, it means...
It's not just go sell more jobs.
No. It means let's focus on revenue, which could include progress payments, change orders, accounts receivable, sales. But sales usually comes, when you sell, when the act of selling produces revenue usually later. So what can I get for revenue? But the ability to get revenue is a lifeline of a company. Any startup, not just roofing, any business anywhere. And to not have revenue sucks. So you have to always have a way to get revenue, whether it's sales or going after your accounts receivable or cash flow or getting a loan or me. I just, I sold my company. I had a revenue problem this last year. I had a major revenue problem. I mean, part of the reason I sold WTS SVG was, well, there's many reasons, but I had a revenue problem. I cash flowed this house because this claim didn't pay out. I moved my 3-year-old daughter here. I went through, I didn't produce revenue at SVG. I downsized my team. I took my whole office. I tore my whole office down because they weren't hitting their KPIs when I was dealing with becoming a full-time dad for the first time. Not first-time dad, but first-time full-time custody, which I never knew what that really meant with a 2 and a 3. She was 2 then to 3. That consumes every bit of your, that's all your waking hours. So I made some very drastic, gregarious decisions out there in Arizona, coming out here, but those things had a huge impact on my revenue. I was down to 0 because I was also cash flowing this thing, this was supposed to be a rehab and flip. It became a rehab and hold. Now I'm here. But it was a very interesting year. So you talk about revenue. I mean, for me, I was like, oh, geez, okay, what am I going to do?
So money's not coming in. You have to adjust.
I started floating the idea of selling WTS SVG, and then I also sold solar as a separate it was a separate transaction.
Deal?
Yeah.
How many times have you been sued versus you sued someone? What's the balance of lawsuits? Because I know the roofing contractor business is crazy. You have disputes with the vendors, homeowners, salespeople. What kind of lawsuits you had?
I would say over 10, as a contractor, 10 years as 12 years as a contractor. After 5 to 7 million in revenue, so by year 2 we hit 25 million. Year 2 to the very last year, 8 out of 10 of those years got a lawsuit every year.
Every year?
Oh yeah.
What kind of lawsuits?
If you're doing 10 million plus in contracting, you gotta just expect a lawsuit every year.
Salespeople or homeowners? Or?
Sometimes a frivolous lawsuit from a homeowner that's maybe I remember we did a Columbus, Ohio, actually, which was a good storm. We did a Ludowici tile roof in Columbus, Ohio, and they didn't like the way the roof looked. It was done past code. You've seen this. Guy's wife or somebody was an attorney and then sued, and you end up settling. Sometimes these are frivolous things. We've had, I think we had a slip and fall issue once where somebody fell.
What's the worst lawsuit you ever have that drained you emotionally, put stress on you?
We've never had a lawsuit where we had to go to I've never gone to a jury trial lawsuit, like lost a lawsuit in a jury trial, if that you mean. Meaning most lawsuits, 90% of them are settled before they go to court. Well, in general, one of the most emotionally draining legal matters was the split up and of my partner of Abelard Construction. That took a year.
It's like a
to
divorce.
Build all those jobs and then part ways without it. Again, it's like It's like having being married without a prenuptial agreement or being an LLC. Anybody's got a 50-50 LLC, a partner, and it's your buddy right now, and you don't have an op agreement with a buy-sell, go get one tomorrow. Because someday you're going to wake up and not like each other. And if you don't have that piece of paper,
You have to have exit strategy.
you don't have a way to part. And if you don't get along, you don't have a way to part. It's messy. So it took a year to do that, and that was stressful. But it didn't go to there were some threats going back and forth between him and I. But we never went to lawsuit. But it was still very emotionally draining. I don't the Minnesota deal. Okay, I'll tell you one is Minnesota Department of Labor. There's a lady up there. She's probably still there. She likes to do take the contractors down with the fines. We moved a shipment of yard signs from St. Louis to Minnesota. I was a licensed Minnesota contractor. I had a license. But some sales guys from St. Louis had come up and they had some yard signs in their car from St. Louis. St. Louis is not a licensed state. And he stabbed one of the signs out in St. Croix River Valley somewhere. And somebody came by and took a picture of a yard sign with no license. And that lady at the DOLI, I should remember her name because we went to court with her. She gave me a $10,000 fine for a yard sign with no license on it. Although you could look up and see that I had a license.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, we have a license. It's on file at the Minnesota State. She goes,
You have to show.
well, you have a yard sign without a license. That's a $10,000 fine. So we fought it, and that cost $25,000 to fight it. To find out we got the fine waived, but it ended up going to court. And once you fight it, this particular woman, I wish I remember her name, because anybody from Minnesota watching this right now probably knows what I'm talking about, because she goes after contractors. She starts digging in and trying to find other stuff, because she knew she was going to lose that fine.
You'll find if you dig in.
Once she's on you, she'd dig in, find something that happened in Florida 3 years ago. It had nothing to do with Minnesota. I mean, she was so, that was stressful, but we beat it. I mean, that was the only time we went to court and won that deal, but it cost $25,000. So it's not fun to actually go, it's not fun to go to court.
Better to
I
settle.
was thinking about taking you to court once.
I'm pretty sure you did.
Defamation.
Many people did. I was listening.
But you know what I know? You know what I know? It takes minimum a good attorney. It's $25,000, and it's not just the $25,000. It's the accumulation of data and facts and depositions.
But now you're gonna
And if you're focused on that, what are you not focused on? Revenue.
I was listening to Dana White yesterday, and Dana White says so he has this beef with De La Hoya. De La Hoya was bashing him on ESPN, and a reporter says, would you consider taking him to court? And he's like, no, we talk like it's a tough business. We all talk trash about each other. I will never do it, but I will do this. I will always respond. And for me, that's brilliant, because with the media, like the best way, and Dana White was trashed by De La Hoya, like, you're not paying your fighters and stuff. Here's the facts. And I tell everyone, like, you can go and create a video about me.
By the way, when we come back, we're gonna talk about some of those things that you said.
No, sure.
You know why? Because
100%.
Some of them were true.
100%.
Some of them were inflated.
But the point is, if you talk about me, I can reply, and that's the only thing you can do. And people will see the truth, because if it's a media space, the best way is to deal with the media space. That's just my take. Win the Storm. Have you ever made money at Win the Storm per year? Like, everybody knows that you don't make money on conferences. I made money in the last year, actually, after 5 years, and I'm done with mine. But have you been profitable?
Yeah, the first 5 or 6 years, it was break even or lost money. The idea wasn't to necessarily make money on a conference. It was to sell traditional SVG products, services, subscriptions. But I think at the last 3 or 4 years, which was really Phoenix, 2019, NOLA, 2020, Dallas, obviously was a blowout, a big one. Those 3 years were money makers, meaning not huge amounts of money, but enough where you're like, it's a business model.
How many people have reached out to you for a free ticket, handout, or free VIP?
Well, everybody. when you're friends with a lot of people, they expect deals. So I think one of the reasons.
Hold on. Out of all people who attended, how many people actually bought the tickets versus like free passes? And
well, our strategy was probably different than most people. So to me, like when we sold a subscription to SVG University, it always came with a free complimentary ticket. because I felt like the owner, if they're buying your university or you're training for a year, they should get a free ticket as part of the package. And obviously, no one's going to come alone. So an owner's going to either come with a manager or a couple salespeople. So he became a lead magnet to sell more tickets to by giving him a free ticket with his subscription. So we were always selling tickets 24/7, 365 days a year, even right after the conference, by virtue of selling training and providing a free ticket. We had a lead magnet. So a couple months later, when we came to the conference time, hey, you got yourself a free ticket here. Why don't you want to bring a couple sales guys? You want to bring a manager? And that might have been one of the reasons we were able to grow. For 9 years, Wind the Storm had steady growth up until Dallas for 9 years in a row. That was because of the ticket strategy of giving away one free ticket for every subscription. And in some cases, if it was a big company and they had a lot of salespeople, of course, you give the owner one free ticket, but he'd buy a bucket of tickets for his sales associates or some key managers.
For you personally, what was the best year? What's your favorite year?
There are a lot of favorite years. I mean, Phoenix was good. NOLA was a good show because we came right out of COVID and we were the first ones to open up New Orleans. But for attendees, where we breached close to 7,000 was Dallas.
21?
2021, yeah. Actually, you call it February 2022, but for the 2021 year, yeah.
Favorite speaker of all times?
Oh man, there's some good ones. We had Gary Vee, we had Robert O'Neill, the guy who killed Osama bin Laden. We had Michael Gerber, Robert Kawasaki. I mean, I think the one that I think had the most impact on the industry was probably Gary Vee. And I know not everybody liked him, but there's a lot of guys that came to me like Jonathan Sherwood afterwards and said that speech changed his whole way he launched himself, his brand, his business, because he learned about digital marketing. And I heard that from some other people too, meaning I think that year was Vegas, if I recall, South Point, Vegas, Gary Vee. I think that was 2018. I saw an explosion that following year or two of people. You see people like, why are all these roofing contractors in the digital marketing space? Like the YouTube pod, everybody doing the digital marketing thing. There was an uptick of that after 2018. I think Gary Vee had an impact. So he was fun. He's fun to watch. He swears a lot. He connected with the audience. Some people didn't like that.
What about the worst? Someone who you regret getting on the stage, or maybe like disappointed?
I might get a defamation suit, so I got to be careful.
Or maybe like disappointed, or maybe like expectations were here and the results were here. You did not.
There were some speakers, when you do large sponsorship packages, sometimes that comes with a speaking opportunity. And so sometimes you're trying to weigh things because you want to
pay to speak.
Yeah, not all of them, but sometimes sometimes you have to. You got to support the show with something. Meaning, like a Gary Vee, Robert Kawasaki, those type of people, you're paying for them to speak. They're outside the industry. They're interesting to watch on stage. They're entertaining because people want to be entertained. Sometimes when you do these larger sponsorship packages, you got to include a 30-minute stage time. You don't have to, but you do it because it helps bring in some sponsor dollars. And some of those people have good content. A couple of them maybe weren't the best content on stage. I wouldn't say they were horrible speakers, but maybe just not a necessity to be on main stage. They should have been in a breakout session.
Can you share a couple stories that you never shared publicly from Wind the Storm? Something crazy behind the scenes.
Well, you shared a lot of those stories on your YouTube channel.
I'm not even talking about negative, but like something. Yeah, I have stories from my conference that kind of behind the scenes.
Well, I think I think you might be going in one direction. Look, Wind the Storm. People watching this right now that maybe never went, or maybe they watched your video about how it was all party and all this. Look, you got to understand the early days of Wind the Storm of what this was. You got to go back to 2013. This is when the storm industry was just becoming a definition by itself, an industry, because before that it was a bunch of mom and pops in the wild, wild west, and nobody talked to each other. So the first conference, it wasn't really a conference. It was in Phoenix, Arizona, at a hotel, and it was 50 of my buddies that were storm chasing buddies that got together,
to celebrate,
get together and talk about how to make more money, shooting the shit, going out at night, having some fun, drinking, partying, having a good time. And it was a boys club, okay? And it wasn't I wouldn't even call it a conference and trade show. It was one-day seminar. The following year, we did it in Phoenix, Arizona again, and it got a little bigger. Maybe it was a couple hundred. And it didn't really blow up until the third one, which was that wasn't even real big, but it was a lot compared to the first two, which was Vegas, 2016, and that's when I named it Win the Storm. Prior to that, it wasn't even called Win the Storm; it was called Win the Game Seminar. It was based off my book, and that's where I started getting people in that I didn't know. But even in 2016 in Vegas, it was still there weren't a lot of female business owners of roofing companies in 2015. There's a lot now, and I applaud that. But there wasn't a lot then, not in the storm restoration space. So in 2016, we're in Vegas, about 750 or maybe 1,000 people at that one in Vegas. All guys. And this is back, you got to understand, I was just coming out of storm chasing myself. Storm chasing is a different world than retail contracting. You're traveling on the road all the time. I was single, not married. I didn't have a child living with me like I do now. So I was living my life as an entrepreneur, but I was living, I lived by a motto of work hard, play hard. I worked hard and I was responsible in business, but when the business was over, I felt like we should have a good time. And those 2 years in Vegas, 2015, 2016.
Would you say they earned the Win the Storm reputation early on?
Well, I think about, when I think about some of the rumors out there and some of the things that you did online, there was a period of time there in Vegas over those 2 years where, you're in Vegas, you're there with a couple thousand guys. There's gentlemen's clubs in Vegas, there's nightclubs, there's the lifestyle, there's gambling. But you're also coming off a 10-year run of storm chasing. And storm chasing itself is a lifestyle of traveling and being on a road. It's lonely. You're around strangers in strange cities. And so it's a lifestyle of what you would probably term a loose lifestyle or a fun lifestyle. And for me, coming out of the military, storm chasing reminded me of the military. You're mobilizing to a strange place or city you've never been to before. You're bringing a bunch of guys together. You're out helping a community, rebuild after a storm or catastrophic event, but you're also away from your friends and family. And so a natural recourse in that environment is to go have a beer, go have some drinks, have a good time, tear it up on the weekends, and come back and work hard on Monday. And so that was a lifestyle that I spent 10 years in. And so for me, when I launched, Win the Storm, and guys coming together in Vegas, the lifestyle didn't change. It was still part of, I don't think that lifestyle is wrong per se. I think it's something you go through. As a man, you go through, and eventually you come to a point where maybe that lifestyle is not appropriate. Right now, I'm raising a 3-year-old, for example, and that's not appropriate. But
let's talk about it really quick, because one thing is now you've been in a leadership position as a organizer of major event, and what I want to touch on is bigger problem. Like, first of all, roofing industry in general, we have a lot of drug addicts, alcoholics, right? Like, not educated people, but that's one. But now you raising different people, like young people who make quick money fast, right? And even for people like I'm 40, you're 50, like even when you're established,
52.
Well, back then you were.
It's my birthday today.
Happy birthday!
It's been my birthday on Dimitri's podcast.
Look at that. Would you look at that? But comment below, happy birthday for Anthony. But the reality is, how many people have you seen that are not ready for that? Like I'm talking about young guys. Like, if you take 22-year-old, give him $100,000 and send him to Las Vegas, wouldn't you say it's a recipe for disaster if you don't have a good mentor, if you don't have a good role model in front of you?
Looking back at it now, bringing a couple thousand young men to Vegas, is a risk, I think, in any industry for a conference. At that point of what I was doing with my lifestyle, I probably could have, at that point, we're talking 2016, 2017. Could I have been, was I in a leadership position then as starting to organize men in the industry for the first time? Yes, I was. And I probably could have made some better choices as to, okay, what are we doing tonight after the conference or after the award ceremony? New Orleans, I got the largest penthouse, downtown New Orleans. People over having fun, but this is after the conference is over. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, But you're right. If a 25-year-old entrepreneur was to come hang out and he sees different leaders like myself and, having fun, they might think that that's the only thing going on, that's a major part of the lifestyle. To me, it was a work hard, play hard lifestyle. So there's no bad intentions over it. It's just a life I came from.
Well, you did it probably for yourself. You have your friends, your buddies, you celebrating. I've been actually years later when I started my conference, I went the same path, like scaled back, but the same thing. Like first conference, I remember actually first conference. At the end, we have this thing on a stage, and we were drinking a little bit, right? Like White Claw and stuff. And I remember we had the White Claw. I literally had White Claw on a stage. It's first year, I'm on a stage, and people criticized me for it. And rightfully so. And I would, never did it again on the stage later. You adopt, you grow. But what's funny? I was watching CrossFit games early on. So CrossFit as an organization, the sport is like 15 years old, right? You watch early CrossFit games, like get-togethers, like where athletes from all over the country gets in, like wins the prizes for like games. They have a beer chug contest. Like you do burpees and you do beer chug. And I'm like, even CrossFit, like when it's like, I'm talking about Rich Froning, who's like role model and he won like later. And I'm watching it because there's a factor when you get with your buddies, you have one mission, you have one thing in common that all you do. And there's only so much you can consume as far as like knowledge goes. You can't be in the classroom all day and it's like, oh, great, you're a roofer. I'm a roofer too. Great. Now what? Now let's have a beer, right? And that's what I feel like in every, but I feel like as a leader, myself, as you as a leader, we have greater responsibility to be careful, and be responsible for the people that we lead. And I was so like today, I'm not going to drink with the fans. I'm not going to drink with I'm not going to go to the party. I'm going to say, excuse me, I have places to be. I don't want to influence people in that way. And I want to show them, I want to be a better leader. Because when you have 2,000 people looking at you, you're responsible for them. And I've seen, in those who follow me, the same thing like what I did. Oh man, that's because of me. They're doing that. And I was not happy with it. So.
Well, we had an instance, something and again, you don't necessarily directly contribute to these things, but the environment does, and you have to take some responsibility.
Are you talking about?
Well, we had an instance in I think it was 2016 where a guy, he's from Minnesota, Dave Kuntz. He had apparently took some kind of drugs, not around me. It wasn't near me, but it was in Vegas. It was at my event, and he I don't remember the whole story, but he jumped or fell or was chased by some police. Jumped off. He ended up in the emergency room. He almost died.
But I remember it was someone did die from overdose or something too, like at the conference. I don't know, like if you remember or not, but I remember rumors like that.
There was actions that happen in these things that I might not, like Dave, wasn't directly involved in that situation, but it still happened during your show, and you still feel a personal responsibility. It was that year actually that I decided to tamp things down in terms of, the aggressive industry award night party where we rented out the whole second floor of the nightclub of whatever that was in Vegas, and you had 300, 400 guys up there having fun and a VIP bottle. Like, look, some people look at it, they go, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fun. That's in Vegas. But what happens in that environment when people are drinking and, some people do have drug addiction problems. Some people do take things to another level. You're still part of, you're right. I was part of that and I contributed. So I made a decision that following year to start to tamp some of that stuff down, and by, heck, by Fort Lauderdale, we didn't really do anything fun like that anymore at the end. But
seems like you did not have anything in Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale.
Nothing happened at Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale was all content, boot camps, and training. Not a lot of fun. But look, there's a learning lesson there. But I also don't want to condescend. There's a lot of condescending, especially in our industry for some reason. More so than I see in other places. I don't want to condescend people that are making those choices on their own, being that I think that, and I don't want to say men because this includes women, I think everybody's going through a bell-shaped curve in their life. And I think, like for me, I wouldn't necessarily go back and change things I did in my life, but I do look back and recognize that I could have done things a little differently. but I lived a certain lifestyle because that's what I came from. I grew up in a lifestyle like that. I grew up a certain way, and I didn't know other things. Okay,
and you attract people who are similar to that as well.
Yeah, and I still do believe in. I think when you're in your 20s and 30s, work hard, play hard. You should have some fun and make some mistakes. Okay, you can't start off an adult life and live a perfect lifestyle of a student-ass in every kind of way. So you're going to make mistakes along the way. Okay, and I'm not taken back from what I said about regret. What I'm trying to say is, I'm never going to sit back and judge people for how they live their lifestyle, because everybody could be judged for something. And I certainly would never, I've made it a point never to say things online about people or gossip. I might say some side conversations to friends, but putting that out there, because A, I don't want that done to me. And B, I just don't think there's time in life to sit and judge others. I think people learn those decisions on their own. And make those decisions when it's appropriate. Now, with that said, there are people, and this is where I've had a little change of heart this last year. I've always looked at, in the past, having fun, work hard, play hard, partying as a cyclical thing. Meaning, if you work hard, you should enjoy life and have fun. That's why we're Americans. We're here to have fun and make money, have fun, and live your life to your fullest and all that stuff. But there are people that have issues, okay, and drug addiction issues and alcohol issues. Now, I still enjoy having a drink or a whiskey once in a while. Peanut butter whiskey. I don't drink every day, maybe once or twice a week. I've never really had a problem with alcohol. I had a little problem at a time period, especially with all the road tours and stuff, of Adderall, okay? Oh. Not a point where I had to go to a hospital or anything for it, but you start taking a substance that keeps you moving, shaking and moving, shaking and moving. Some people, college students, have a problem with Adderall. You start taking something and you could become inadvertently you're addicted to it or do it. Now I don't do it anymore, but for a while there, that became an issue. Now there's other people that have other problems with other drugs that some people might call recreational. Smoking some weed might be considered recreational. Some people smoke weed and they can't move off this chair and they're dysfunctional. Some people get addicted to cocaine. Everybody could be addicted to, get addicted to something. So it's not fair to me to say, hey, everybody work hard, play hard, and not acknowledge that there's people out there in pain and something could happen because something you consider recreational, they have a problem, they become addicted to it. And where that really came to fruition to me was, my 3-year-old daughter's mom, who I have custody now, developed a very bad drug addiction.
Oh, wow.
A really bad one. I think it meth or something. And pursued a lifestyle where she couldn't take care of her daughter, in which case, a year and a half ago, I became a full-time father almost overnight. Not that I wasn't accustomed to being a dad, but being a dad 2 weekends out of the month or having 50% custody with nannies is quite different than taking on a 2-year-old with no full-time nannies, almost overnight out of the blue, and being granted full custody by the courts, saying, hey, you're the last in line. You're the last line of defense.
I want to come back.
So that's where I started realizing that, hey, there's people that have real addictions out there that check people, that affect people's lives around them. And then you start thinking about the things in the past that maybe what I thought was fun or recreational to somebody else could have been life-threatening.
We'll come back to the daughter because it's a big story on its own. I want to ask you about your block list.
I got the longest block list in history.
How big do you think? Do you think you have more people on the block list than on a friend list?
Oh, no. But there's definitely a couple hundred on there, yeah.
I want to ask you.
You just came off the block list.
I did. I made it, guys.
When you put yourself out there online,
100%.
Even if you're perfect, you're always going to have a hater out there of some kind. So
everybody does.
And after 10 years in the SVG space, I was out. My brand was out there. I was out there. You're online. There's always some knucklehead or somebody talking about you.
I wanted to ask you about something in particular. So you have a lot of people that you promoted, like your friends list, right? And people who've been on the stage, maybe failed later. People who kind of in your circle. So we have there's two schools here, and I feel like I already know the answer. So if you think about President Putin, right? So it's one type. So Putin has this thing it's a famous saying, like we are not, pretty much he always has your back. Like if you right now make, let's say his prime minister or anybody in the Russian government gets exposed for corruption, you can be killed, killer, you can kill a person, whatever. You will never see the jail because you are close to him. Like he will not let you suffer because you are like one of us. That's how I always felt with you. Like for me, if my friend does something unethical, bad, whatever, I'm still gonna be by him, support him, but I'm like, my friend messed up here and we're gonna deal with it, right? I feel like with you and with SVG as a group, and I've seen it last time as example in Colorado, like one of you guys, David, I believe, when the guy was doing a garage door damage, he got in the news for like bad publicity, right? And I've seen people in at SVG asking that question. It's like, hey, guys, one of you are doing this damage, like stop. And I've seen SVG admins, I don't know who did it, like deleting the comments, like, no, you don't talk bad about us. So I feel like you're more
that
like
was me.
I feel like you're more like Putin. Like if anybody...
That was me, because I believe, look, in America, you're innocent till proven guilty, number one.
Okay.
So you asked me some questions about Steve Soule earlier. I don't look at his books. I don't know. You can listen to a lot of gossip. I know he's a good person, and he probably ran into some cash flow problems. So if somebody, when I was running SVG, I don't run SVG, so I can't do that anymore, but at that time I still was. If somebody was to talk bad, like I always had a unwritten rule, it was actually a written rule on the private SVG page. I don't believe in talking bad about contractors. Now I know you believe in exposing people and
but why not
bringing
talk,
out, bringing out stuff.
Talk about both sides? So like, would you agree that insurance companies commit fraud and should be exposed, but contractors do it too? I feel like with you, we can talk about insurance, but we cannot talk about contractors.
Because that's just the way it was. I mean, I don't.
So you like like Putin. You don't talk about us.
My mission was to help contractors and help raise the reputation of the storm restoration industry and actually define it and bring a group of guys together. My mission wasn't, there's plenty of other people that have that mission. I mean, the insurance companies, the DAs, the attorney generals, the Dimitris, whomever. If they want to do that, that's fine, but mine wasn't. So mine purposely was, now there might be some bad contractor apples out there, but you would never would have saw the stories about them on my page because they would have got deleted. Why? Because I wasn't a page to spread negative, true or untrue, negative gossip, maybe true gossip. You can find that on other pages. So I was always that page. It doesn't matter if they were my friend or not. Those
so you just wanted to be a safe haven for contractors.
Yeah, because you go to a lot of social media pages in the past and somebody's always talking crap to so-and-so, and another rule was you couldn't sit and shit talk somebody on my page. If you did, you'd get warned or get deleted. So yeah, we used to spend a lot of time deleting that stuff, so it was a place where you wouldn't see that kind of stuff. Now, but so when you mention Dave's name again, I heard about something like that. I haven't talked to Dave in maybe 2 years. I haven't seen him in 2 years, sure. But I know him from Minnesota growing up. Maybe something's true, maybe it's not, but. I'm just when I was in control of that page, whether it was him or not, I wouldn't allow that kind of post on our page because I don't know if it's true or not. And in America, innocent till proven guilty, So why sit and post something negative and all this stuff if we don't know for sure 100% if it's true? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
But it was even like it was his injury. He was admitting it. It was constructive criticism, and I feel like even constructive criticism is not allowed at SVG, and that's what a lot of people have problem with, because I feel like people. Wouldn't you agree
they
that
can always go to another page, right? It's just the way I ran it. Now the new SVG might allow that stuff. I don't think they monitor it. Maybe they don't monitor as closely, but
is the page part of the When the Storm?
Yeah, they own the page. They own my book.
They own your book.
Imagine writing a book and you don't own your book anymore. Oh. Yeah, win the game.
You sold it.
Well, the book, why the book, the printed book sitting over there, you don't really sell printed books or make money off books, but the in the digital marketing campaign, free ebook download is a great lead magnet. So if you're going to sell a digital marketing company, you can't not sell your best lead magnet that goes with it. So with that went the book.
Guide me through your nominations, and was your award ceremony, was it a profit center, was it like a sales channel, or was it really about award?
No, the award ceremony is real. I mean, the awards.
Many people claim that it's pay to play, and people say that they paid for their award.
That's not true.
I mean, the rumors, like
No, there's always rumors. But look, if you look at the elite contractor award, you can go into storm restoration industry. You can't buy an elite contractor. You know who the three top. You look at some of those top people, elite contractor back in the day. Precision, CMR. Who's the other big ones? Linear. I mean, there's only a handful of storm contractors that could be considered in the top 10 to even be nominated. So you can't just,
of course,
some guy around a $5 million company can't say, hey, I want to be nominated for elite contract. It's not possible. So, once they're in that award space of the three nominations, it used to be based on voting. And there was a clock for votes until the last 2 years. And the reason we changed and got rid of the voting is because you could clock votes digitally. You can take a post and say, hey, and send us to all your networks, hey, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. And somebody could inadvertently not actually be an elite contractor or take the high growth contractor. You're either high growth, which means your revenue is growing fastest because based on X, which is your revenue in the last 3 years based on a growth rate. So it's silly to do votes for something that if you're popular, you would get voted in out of a three top nominees. So when we changed out of votes, 2 or 3 years ago, that might have been when some of the rumors started. Say, why don't you do the open votes anymore? Because once you get to the three nominees, if you have a lot of friends and you're popular, it's easy to win that award because you just send it to your friends and you're not really the high growth contractor. You're not really X. And so we did make some changes there, and that may be where some of those came in, but a straight pay to play, no. Now, I will say this, if you got nominated for elite, if you got nominated for high growth, if you got nominated for the best attorney, we would hit you hard up to bring all your people. And hey, don't you want to have all your people sitting in elite VIP? You're nominated, you're going to be on stage, you're going to be talked about. Oh, yeah. So
from that perspective, it is.
It might have perceived like, well, yeah, they brought 30 sales guys there and they bought the sponsorship package and they also won. But it was actually, we were pushing on, we were very hardcore on the sales aspect, meaning, look, if you're going to be nominated for an award, don't you want all your salespeople here and your key managers and your wife and all? Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's do a nice VIP package for you. So some of that can come from perception, but a straight pay to play to win, no.
Last conference, was it your lowest point? Here's the rumor that I heard. Not the rumor, story, I guess, from mutual friends, that it was your lowest point. Tell me how much from this is true and just guide me through the process. So you lost a lot of money at last winter storm, complete failure, you hit the rock bottom, and then you found Jesus through it, and you literally got baptized about the same time or close to it, but it was where you hit the bottom and you...
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to that.
Yeah.
So gossip's one thing. I'll tell you the straight deal. So Winter Storm, as you know, grew 9 years straight. And then the pillar year was Dallas. I mean, we had Jimmy Johnson, Herschel Walker on stage. We made the front page of Dallas News, 7,000 attendees. It's hard to, a business goes up for 9 years, nothing goes up forever. Everything goes like this eventually. So eventually there was going to have to be a dip. That dip was Fort Lauderdale. But why did Fort Lauderdale, why did we not get the attendees? It was less than 2,000, maybe 1,500 attendees. So to go from 7,000 to 1,500 attendees.
I mean, watching videos, it was even less than that. Like our conference was 1,500.
Paid tickets was 1,500.
I see.
Do they all come and show up at the same time? No. Did so-and-so do an event down the street? I think Sam Taggart steal 100 for something on the first day. Yeah. Did so-and-so, John Seneck or whatever, do another event at the hotel across the street and take a couple? I mean, people were also doing some sabotage, to
why
bring
all of that happened like in
well,
one
that's
place?
that's part of, I think that's part of business competition. People do stuff. I mean, that happened a couple of years ago. Sam did that 2 or 3 years ago at another conference, brought some people across the street because he couldn't get the ballroom he wanted mine at the last minute, whatever. That's just part of business. But that's not what caused the problem there. That's just minuscule. What happened was, if you go back to Emery, okay, I had taken custody of her about 7 months prior to the Fort Lauderdale conference. So you have to understand what was going on with me and SVG to understand why the attendees were low. Meaning, I shut the SVG off, the 16,000 square foot office down in Arizona. I had shut down 3 to 4 months prior to Fort Lauderdale because I had to, because I had taken custody of the Emery, and I had to be at the house all the time instead of doing what I usually do, which is micromanage that office to like a T.
So guide me through that process. Like, how do you have this child, and how did it change you? Like,
Her mom dropped her off on her second birthday and sent me a text and said I need to be prepared to take her, that she can't handle her anymore, and she's going to check into rehab. And she didn't come back.
you were okay with it?
I mean, I was.
Like, if someone told me 5 years ago that
I took full control, but I wasn't prepared. Meaning, I was trying to tell you, there's a difference between having shared custody a couple weekends out of the month where you're set up with the nanny or the mom or the sister coming to help. You know, I'm a single guy. Keep in mind. So this is, remember old Anthony that we were talking about earlier?
Yep.
You know,
That
I had a
wild man. Dead Bilzerian style.
10,000 square foot house in the base of Paradise Valley, at a 16,000 square foot office, and I had a lifestyle in place, which wasn't raising a toddler 24/7. Now, a 2-year-old girl is not like a 10-year-old kid.
And you had a girl before.
You have to sleep them at night. You're up till 2 in the morning. You have to feed them, change their diapers. I mean, this was new to me, and I didn't have full-time nannies in place. So there was a period of about 2 or 3 months where I'm taking care of a 2-year-old girl. And then KPIs at the office started going like this. And so what I did is I went up and had a talk with the team up there and said, look guys, if you guys aren't going to perform because I'm not here micromanaging everything, I will shut this office down. And that's the mindset I was in. I was in a very different mindset. And of course the KPIs didn't improve. So I walked in one day, and a week later, I shut that off. You know, I kept a Navy SEAL team in place, a Navy SEAL team of, but I let go of, I probably let go of 15 people in 1 week, just like that.
Just so you could be stay-home dad?
Well, because they were overhead and they weren't performing, and I didn't want to manage that situation. I was very upset about my situation. I was upset about that they weren't performing to KPI because I wasn't there, and I was angry. And so when you're angry, sometimes you do drastic things. I'm known to do very drastic things. They didn't believe I would shut the whole office down, and I did. And so I kept my Navy SEAL team, which is about 4 or 5 people, and that small group of people, we continued to run the Fort Lauderdale conference. But for 6 months before that conference, I used to have a marketing machine in place, a call center, videographers. That whole machine is what produced sales and tickets and excitement. And I was sitting at home taking care of a 2-year-old with 4 or 5 people working from home.
That's the most powerful 2-year-old in the storm restoration industry for the past couple of years. Wow.
And what happened during that time is I went through, you go through some personal changes. You know, you're like, first of all,
what was going through your mind?
Well, at first you feel like a victim, like, how did this happen to me? And then you realize she's the victim. And then you're the only support system for her. You know, I'm in Arizona. I got no family.
No relationship with the mom whatsoever?
No, she was gone. Never checked into rehab like she said she was going to. Disappeared. Didn't show up to court. There was a court case, an emergency court case, because I had to still win full custody. It doesn't, that doesn't happen all the time very quickly. But because of the way that she was, dropped off, abandoned, the mom didn't show up. The mom didn't report in for a hair follicle test. She never showed up to court. She showed up on video, and then it didn't show up to court. The judge was like, 100% custody, sole legal 100%. And so I'm like, I took that, that was like, most of my friends that have been through custody battles that have a lot of money say that to get that would have cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they'd be lucky to get 50-50 because of the dad. And I got it like this, but that also became with responsibility, meaning I was, her last line of defense. She didn't have family. I didn't have family in Arizona.
Did you know about this child before 2 years old? Like, were you part of
I was
her
involved.
life?
I was involved in her life, but it was on the weekends, Saturday overnight and Sunday. So I was set up a little bit for that, but not being able to work during the week when you're used to being in full-fledged into what you do, and now caring for a baby. And the nannies I had I came on a weekend to help wasn't the type of nanny that could stay overnight, put him to sleep, and do all that stuff. So I had to learn all that stuff.
So now you have to do the
I know how to
conference
rock
with
a baby. I know how to change diapers. I know how to deal with eczema, diaper rashes, stomach problems. I mean,
And she has a drug addiction.
I should do it. I should do a course on that.
Single
Yeah,
thing.
and so I also, you know, so during that time, I also came to the conclusion that, you know, drug addiction has some huge impacts. It's not just a, you know, having fun, and not everything's recreational for everyone. Okay, and sometimes it affects people's lives. Affected mine, affected the little girl's life. So leading forward, you have to understand, you know, why they say, why did Fort Lauderdale not have the attendees? Well, we didn't really put the marketing and the sales machine behind it. It was already in place and contracted, so we had to do the conference, and but we didn't have that huckspot. I didn't do a road tour. I wasn't out on the road selling tickets, you know, in the Sprinter. I wasn't doing all that stuff because I was at home, and I was spending most of my time dealing with that and dealing with custody. Now, during that same time, leading up, I think it was February 2023, before the conference, I did a pre-walkthrough in Fort Lauderdale. You know, you mentioned the baptism thing. And Jeff Richfield caught me. Over the years, he's one of those guys always shows up in the weirdest places, you know, at my conference, like in the gym or the bathroom or something. He goes, "Hey man, I want to pray for you. I want to pray for you." And I was kind of like, "Okay, Jeff, let's do it." You know, usually back in the day, I was usually hungover. Like he's like, "I want to pray for you." And so this time he caught me, where was it? I think it was in a gym or something in Fort Lauderdale. It was at this resort hotel. It was before the conference, about a month. It was in February, just like now.
So it was before.
It was a year ago today. No, it was a year ago today.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had already won custody of Emery, and things were starting to get a little more normalized, but I still didn't have a great nanny system in place. The conference of the month, I was stressed. You know how it is. You're stressed out a month before. You know, attendees might be low, but you still got to do the show.
And months before, you have like 80% of tickets comes like last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So we're doing the walk. We always do the walkthrough, and then we do the follow-up, you know, the month before. So there's different people in that were part of the show. Jeff was, and he said, "Hey, I want to pray for you." I said, "Yeah, maybe, you know what, Jeff? Maybe I should actually, maybe we should." And we were happy to be behind the resort, and it was kind of rainy outside, and we were by the ocean in Fort Lauderdale. He goes, "Why don't you, let's walk down." There was really nowhere, because I wouldn't want him to like pray in public where people could, because he'll just pray right out in front of people. You know, you're sitting there going, and people looking at you, and he's praying, and you're a little self-conscious. I was a little So let's walk down by the ocean. So you walk down by the ocean, and then you know, it wasn't a traditional baptism, so to say, like maybe they do in church, but they, you know, he dunked me in the ocean, and there was a moment.
How did you feel? Like, did you feel changed?
Not like he got out of the water and felt like a new person, but I felt a connection, and that was probably the first time in, you know, a long time. But it was very brief. It was enough. It was a flicker.
How did your life change after that?
It got worse.
It got worse.
Yeah, the next couple months
It
got worse.
really is.
It
You're
did.
gonna be under
It
attack after
nothing.
that.
Nothing magical happened right after that. But like I said, there was a flicker of connection, and then, you know, a lot of things got worse. You know, it just, a lot of things happened. So many things happened. That's when I also actually made a decision. You know, we had the conference, the attendees were low, but I knew that was going to happen anyways.
How much money did you lose on that year, on that event?
On Fort Lauderdale? I actually didn't lose money on Fort Lauderdale.
You didn't?
No. Because once you get really good in the conference space, it's not always about attendees. Where the revenue actually comes into place is exhibitor booths.
But you pitched a lot of vendors.
Well, we filled every vendor. The exhibitor floor was full.
Yeah, but not the attendees. But that's why.
Exhibitor floor was full, and we had, you know, sponsorships. We had sponsorship packages, and those.
Because I remember we have a lot of mutual vendors, and I've heard so many times like never coming back, never coming back, never coming back. Because
what about the first 9 years?
Exactly.
Okay, so
But for some it could be first.
Some of those same exhibitors enjoyed the ride of the first 9 years and met all kinds of new clients. And so I just happened to have a year where, unfortunately, it wasn't what it should have been, you know. But it is what it is. That's business. Nothing in life goes up forever, and we all think it will, but eventually you take a dip.
Talking about the U.S. economy now.
Eventually something takes a dip. So, but I will say that, you know, And everybody likes to see a fall of something going up eventually. You know, I took a fall. You know, Wind of Storm was successful, 9 years of solid growth. The last one was not so successful on attendees, and it took a dip, and it is what it is. And a lot of that had to do with the personal issue, because we couldn't drive that sales and marketing machine for that 6 months prior. So looking back on it, I'm actually happy that it all happened the way it did. And it's weird how that happens, because at the time you're going, oh man, I gotta, you know, you start realizing that maybe your time is better spent now in a different area. Maybe my passion isn't the same. The other thing
Are you burned out from the conference and roofing space?
Absolutely, yeah. So I started floating the idea before Fort Lauderdale. You know, I went through a LOI after Dallas with CERC, which was a publicly traded solar company that was going to buy SVG, WTS. So I don't think it was any story that I was already entertaining this idea back in Dallas. Because truthfully, I'll just be honest, after Dallas, although Dallas was record, I was feeling inside that I want to talk about something different. I don't want to talk about roofs, insurance claims, Xactimate, Wind of Storm. When you start in your own head, start going, your feelings aren't the same anymore. You gotta remember, I've been in the industry 22 years. I started as a sales guy in 1999, was a contractor for 12 years till 2012. Then I was SVG for 10 years. That's 20 years of talking about the same stuff.
It gets boring.
I'm sure you experience that yourself sometimes.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I love the industry, and it did well by me, and I think I did some great things for the industry. And I did well from the industry, both as a salesman, as a contractor, learned a ton about film and digital marketing in the SVG space, conference. I'd never done a conference before. I learned as I went. But it was time, and I knew this after Dallas, and I knew things don't go up forever, and all of a sudden that thing happened, you know,
Was it hard to let go? Tell me about new ownership. How did sale go through? What's next for Wind of Storm?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so we get through Fort Lauderdale, and I was still floating the idea, you know, there was conversations going on that it was time for me to sell, meaning I was interested in talking to people. I didn't advertise it. I didn't hire a broker. I didn't hire an attorney. I call it a whisper campaign. I talked about this in Exit Strategy Boot Camp. You don't always have to hire a broker and hire these attorneys. If you have a business model that's successful or a proven success, there's people probably around you in your industry that might want to buy it. It could be your competitor. It could be someone.
I have that right now.
Yeah.
I have like 5 people talking to me to buy mine.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the strangest things that come up. I mean, I had after Fort Lauderdale, people were like, oh, Fort Lauderdale bombed, it was slow. But I still had a 9-year history, not only real history of brand.
The brand is there.
But financials. If you looked at my financials in the last 3 years of Wind of Storm, they're pretty at SVG combined, pretty incredible from a profit standpoint. Digital marketing is a lot of profit once you create all the content, especially in an online university. But I just didn't have the passion to run it anymore. I mean, especially dealing with the.
Did you sell SVG too?
Yeah,
so
the whole thing.
So you don't have light speed, nothing.
And so within 3 months after Fort Lauderdale, keep in mind what was going on here, where we're at here. So this property here was meant. I bought this property to be a rehab and flip, and it was going to be a course inside SVG.
Give me this story really quick, because I want to understand how you got this.
So this property, after Hurricane Ian hit, this was hit here with Cat 4, I think Cat 5 winds. That steel door down there was bent in. That roof was ripped off. This is filled with water. This is all water, and you could see the sky through here. So this property is a 920,000 policy limits claim we're sitting in right now. Farmers insurance. So I bought the property from Tammy, the homeowner, with the claim assigned. And the whole reason I did it, believe it or not, was to wasn't meant to live here. It was to do a rehab and flip. I was going to say, well, I'll get the insurance money. That'll actually pay me back for the property, because I knew it was going to be a big claim. I'll fix it. I'll make, I'll get some of these other trades done for less money. So I was thinking in my head, and I'll make a course and film it all, and I'll have something new for SVG University, something nobody's ever seen before. Rehab and flip using the claim to buy the property. I even created a course thumbnail. I I thought this will give new
I've
juice.
seen it.
This will give new juice to SVG University. That was my idea because I needed something new. You always need something new, otherwise you're talking about the same old stuff. And so that was the plan. You know, this is before Fort Lauderdale. This is back in December, right? Well, after the Fort Lauderdale thing, and then some things happened to Arizona where the moms showed up unexpectedly.
Moms?
Mom. From Emery's mom.
Yeah.
Meaning showed up like through the window at 3 a.m. in the morning, trying to sneak in the house, showing up in a U-Haul trailer in front of the house, going through whatever she's going through with her addiction problems. And I just thought it wasn't safe, you know, showing up like that wasn't safe for Emery to be out there. It wasn't, I mean, it was drama for most people. For me, I was just like, you know what, I don't, what if I wasn't here? What if she took her? I mean, I don't know. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go move into that house out in Florida. And at the time I was starting to rebuild it. There was a lot of work going on here.
That little girl literally have you moved here.
We
What
moved
a
here.
powerful little girl.
We moved here because of her. We moved her here. We moved here in literally right after the Fort Lauderdale conference, probably within 30 days, we moved here. And I shut everything down there. Again, left a little Navy SEAL team, about 3 or 4 people. Didn't know I was selling the company, but I was starting to get some LOIs and some interest. But I moved here to get her out of that environment. Quite honestly, I didn't have any family there. And when you're raising a 2-year-old girl, the 4 or 5 cool guy friends you got in town, they're not hanging out with you anymore, changing diapers, because back, you know, a couple months ago, they're playing pool, having fun, coming over to your nice pad, hanging out. Now you got diapers and baby food, and so I realized I had no family.
Delmedico, the father. I'll be damned, man.
So we move here. This will get into your answer here. We're rehabbing a property, trying to get the roof on, or shrink wrap on the house, dealing with the farmer's insurance stuff. And then I started looking at this helicopter hangar, and I'm like, okay, I can't go find an office right away. I might sell the company, I don't know yet. I got no money because I put all the money to buy the house. You know, you buy the house in cash. That's the other problem. You can't buy a house with a mortgage that's got an open claim with no roof, except shrink wrap. So you got to buy, to get this deal done, I had to buy it in cash. And then I thought man, there's no way they can't pay out for this. I mean, there's water everywhere. I mean, they're going to pay out. I'm going to settle right away, and I'm still waiting to get paid. It's a year and a half later. I'm still waiting. Now they paid out 300 or 400, but it's not, 920,000. There's still another 400 they haven't paid, and that's an appraisal right now. And it's me. Like, you'd have thought I would have had this crushed a year ago.
So nothing
But
is guaranteed.
So I really feel for the homeowners here, because if it's me, and they knew who I was, maybe that's why they're giving me pain. They knew I was SVG. The farmers, they know who I am. But anyways, we're out here. It's 2 months after the conference. It's April. I'm trying to rebuild this thing. I literally have no cash left because I dumped it all into this. And I'm like, I got to turn this into something where I can do what I do to make money, because I can't. I didn't even have a nanny set up here. I didn't really get the nannies in place here until maybe a month ago properly. Where I have coverage. And so I started designing this place, saying, okay, well, if I'm going to shoot here, I made this for me. Then I started realizing other people could use it too. You got podcasts, the speakeasy. So this now turned into my office, and then rejuvenated my motivation to launch MVG Studios, which is where we're sitting now. But that didn't all happen right away. There's a process. And SVG, I got a couple LOIs from some guys on WTS SVG. Josie Parks and Larry Janesky it was a conversation with Josie, and I took a trip up to Larry Janesky's office and up there in Connecticut, and he's like on 28 like acreage of. You talk about contractor university. It's called Contractor Nation. It looks like a college university of buildings everywhere. He's got roofing franchises. He's got basement refinish franchises. He's got dealers. He's got his own conference that people come in there just for his dealers. And he's got an entrepreneur. It's not Storm. It's retail, but it's just a really good entrepreneurship platform for business. A really smart guy. I mean, and spent a couple days up there, and we were just kind of feeling each other out. And him and Josie, presented me with an LOI, and we went back and forth. And they see, I had 2 other ones I was looking at.
So how is Janesky involved in SVG?
He's part owners with Josie.
He's part owner.
Oh yeah.
So it's not just Josie.
No. And I thought, it's Josie and Larry, and they go back years.
Yeah.
Larry's an early mentor of Josie's.
Yep.
And Josie's making all kinds of moves right now. He bought another
Total
tech
home.
company.
Yeah.
He bought another $100 million company, and I don't know if they're partners or not, but they're creating some really interesting stuff. And I think from the retail side, like where you come from, you probably get along well with Larry. He doesn't really have a storm thing. He gets it. Josie understands the storm more, but he can bring a lot of retail things into. And I think they're making plans for that down the road through the new SVG platform to bring all this other stuff that Larry already has to really provide that contractor, maybe that storm guy who's doing nothing but storm, all these other avenues where he can make money on that same customer, whether it's basement refinishing, air duct systems. I'm trying to remember all the stuff he's got. He's got so many different opportunities out there. Yeah, the basement, roofing, all kinds of foundation.
Like 50 patents.
Yeah, I got his air humidifier. I got his air purifiers in my house because Emery has asthma. Like they make them right there in Connecticut. So I bought. They're amazing. Her asthma issues went away because of them. So she's got so many things. So I think there's going to be it's a great marriage with them because they can bring things that I could never have done back in the past. And Josie's a stand-up guy, and I think people are understanding his brand and what his vision is with the new WTS, and they're getting a good response from it, and more power to them. And so it just made sense for me at that time. I think they got a really good deal.
Well, they bought you at the lowest. You should have sold them after the Dallas.
Exactly. But it was a good deal for me too, and it got me out of a. I mean, I don't know if I haven't been down to zero, but in a long time, I've always been good. So when you're down to zero, and you're living on a farm that you bought, that you're stuck rebuilding with a 3-year-old, and you're at zero, and for the first time, you're looking at the price of socks down the street. Never did stuff I didn't notice. Like you become different.
You feel like a single mom who works at McDonald's.
Oh yeah, you become different. So that sale helped. I spun off the solar division. That was a little smaller. That was only a 2-year-old company, but just magical things started happening. Those two things were magical, I think. And then so was getting the ERC tax credit thing from the federal government. There's things that happened systematically here now in the last 6 months that were, some people would call it winning lottery tickets every other month. Not lottery tickets like gregarious amounts of money, but things that right in the nick of time they happened to allow me to rebuild this or do this or put that roof on. Because again, I still waiting on a big chunk of money from that insurance payout on this property that I thought I would have had a year ago or I wouldn't have been in this. But then you start looking at all this going, wow, but if that didn't happen, this wouldn't happen. And if Fort Lauderdale would have been good or mediocre, I probably would have never sold. And if I wouldn't have got custody of the baby, Fort Lauderdale never went mediocre. And if I wouldn't have sold, I wouldn't launch MVG Studios. If I wouldn't launch MVG Studios, I wouldn't be going to Eagle Pass, Texas in 2 weeks to launch episode 4 for Unconstitutional. And I wouldn't have met this investor on the film. And all of a sudden you realize that all these pain points are actually things that made you get a little stronger, better, and move in a new direction.
Let's talk about MVG Studios. What's with your obsession with a TV production? What happened to Contractor Rescue? It was your first take. It was high quality. What went wrong? And how MVG Studio is going to be different from Contractor Rescue?
Contractor Rescue is just a fun reality show to get brand awareness for SVG and my products.
So it wasn't like long term?
No, yeah, that was just a YouTube thing. That was never meant to go monetize, for example.
What about Unconstitutional?
Unconstitutional is quite different. That's a documentary I started shooting during COVID and what I call the Unconstitutional Lockdown of America.
What's the end goal? Are you trying to sell it to like Netflix or?
No.
What are you trying to do with it?
So I have 3 episodes shot right now. One was Arizona, the other was Chicago. This is during COVID. The other one was Minneapolis. So I caught when 148 buildings burned down. I was there filming stuff and talking with people. People forgot about that, and a lot of people don't know what really happened there. And so we caught some very interesting things. But the main goal of the documentary is to remind Americans, especially young ones, what our constitutional rights are, because most don't even know. Like freedom of speech was taken away. The right to assemble was taken away in Chicago. I experienced that myself. The right to express grievance to your government was taken. These are all things in the Bill of Rights. The right to go to church was taken away. So these are things that state and city governments don't have the right to take away from you. And yet it happened in broad daylight and everybody went, oh, okay, that can't ever happen again. Now, so fast forward now into what's going on right now, you got POTUS elections coming up. You got constitutional crisis at the border between the state and federal government. Episode 4 is right now in America. You got us, we're involved in all kinds of crazy wars. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now to capture a moment. So we now fast forwarding to episode 4, and we're going to shoot that. The first filming is going to start in 2 weeks at Eagle Pass, Texas. We're heading to the border.
Who's paying for it? Who are you selling it to?
I've paid for everything so far. So I'm in probably, traveling and filming during COVID. I had videographers in place. I had the Sprinter. So maybe that's $500,000 or whatever. I don't even know, of time and stuff in the field, but it's something I'm just passionate about. I have a film proposal out right now to a couple investors to take, I'm not asking for a lot, $1 million for 49% of Unconstitutional. That just finances the road tour and a final editing, a little cinematography on episode 4, and to polish up the first 3 episodes. There's still a little polishing that you have to do on them. And then get it to digital streaming. And digital streaming I know how to do. That's a landing page, download an episode, $9.99, slide your credit card here based off a trailer. That's the space I just came from. I already know how to do that. And that's what I plan on doing. So you see scan for tickets on the bus. I have no idea how to take it to theaters. I have no idea how to do international film rights, all that. So this one investor that's looking at the film understands the space. He's one of the largest investors for Sound of Freedom by Angel Studios. He's the reason they became what they became. He was here last Friday, Exit Strategy Boot Camp, to check me out, due diligence, and came to the Roaring 20s party. He's older. He only came for a little bit, but that's not a done deal yet, but he's
taking any chances.
He's thinking about it. And if it ain't him, it's going to be somebody else. And so I'm not asking for a gregarious amount of money. It's just enough to really get on the road and then finish the 4 episodes, or do episode 4 and then polish up the first 3 episodes. But once that's done, I can do streaming on my own. Digital download, landing page, release, $9.99, da-da-da-da. And once we show ground movement, that means revenue, interest, trailers, social media. That's everything you see on a whiteboard up there, right there. It's a plan. He can then take it. Now he'd be a 49% partner. Now he can take it to a theater or another buying group or the international, and say, hey, here's the trailers, here's the 4 up. They're actually downloading episode 1 right now. It's July 4, 2024, and they're creating pre-sales. So it's pre-sales that I'm going after. And I'll do this without the investment. I'm going to do this anyways. It just would happen a lot faster with some extra cash. Now you have a business model that's showing traction, and that's when you sell it. So a lot of people sell movies. I did a little bit of research. I've never done this before, but I've done a little, they write a concept for a movie and they go sell it to Hollywood. And you might be in a film, you might not. They own it. You might get a chunk of money. You sell it to Netflix, yada, yada, yada. We're not doing it that way. If you show proof of concept on the ground, and be willing to get on the ground and wrap your Sprinter and get out on the streets and do podcast and sell it on the streets at the street level, you're talking 20, 30x versus 2 or 3x, because you got a proven street model. So I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but I'm going to sell it that way. I'm going to prove it on the streets first through digital downloads, and then either through him or somebody else, then flip it up and do a larger sale, kind of like the roofing companies we talked about. You got the checker game going on, we'll do the checker game on our own, and then play the bigger chess game later. I mean, I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I know that it's something I'm meant to do. And I think with what's going on in America right now, there's all kinds. It doesn't matter what side of what party you're on. There's a problem in America right now, and there's a lot of problems. And somebody's got to get out there, start talking about it, and somebody needs to remind people what that Constitution is. I swore an oath to the Constitution as a military veteran. I was willing to die for it at one time. You don't make a lot of money as a soldier. You make like $1,500 a month to go die and carry a weapon and kill people. And so if you do that because you believe something in the Constitution, which I do, and I think a lot of people forgot about what that means, and they need to be reminded on both sides. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's an American thing. And so I hope that attracts the investment I need to do it. I think it will, because so far every time I move in that direction, it seems like the right thing to do. So I'm not worried about that. I haven't really figured out.
You feel like it's your calling?
Yeah, I really do.
MVG Studios, is it a cross in the studios?
A little cross right here. Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Well, that's partly, you asked me earlier, about the baptism experience, although it might not have been a full baptism, but I believe that.
Do you go to church?
I haven't been to church yet.
Do you read Bible?
I read the Bible.
Do you have,
I started reading the Bible.
Do you have a spiritual mentor?
I do.
Who mentors you?
John Lobb.
I met him at my church in Minnesota.
Oh, really?
When you come back to Minnesota, go to
Johnny Inspired is his online name. Johnny Inspired.
Eagle Brook Church in Minnesota, the best church around. I've been to many churches. I met him like a month ago, like randomly. It's my church. I go there every Sunday, and I see John. Like, John, what are you doing here? Yeah, like he was right.
He comes here like every other week for a day or two.
Yeah, so
I haven't. There's some around here. I'm just now getting to the point where we can actually.
Eagle Brook, my church. So they do live broadcast every Sunday. I'll send you the link. You're gonna like it. Very good preaching. Like not like, you'll see. It's different.
Yeah, we're just getting to the point now here where we can probably do something like that, because like Emery's not going to sit through a church service. She's
online is awesome. Like even my girls, I have 5 kids. 2 of the girls. One of the girls is in the ministry, like sitting with the kids. So she comes to church with us, but she has to sit, like being in a nursery or whatever. And then she comes home and she watches service online, because she misses the service because she's serving with the little kids. And she comes home and she has to watch it. We told her, if you want to serve, you still have to listen to the message and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like 1 hour. It's great. And if we travel, if we're not there on Sunday, I'll watch it online as well. It's very cool.
Check it out.
Yeah.
That's next. I got to figure out where to go around here and all that. There's been a lot of messaging right here.
It's a process.
There's been a lot of messaging at this place right here. This is a unique property. Let me tell you. I put that. I was hesitant about putting that on there, because I don't want to be the fish guy. The guys that put the fish in the logos, and I'm not. Again, I don't preach to people. I don't.
But it's a statement.
Well, it's a statement that he had something involved in what I'm doing here. So I want to make sure that he gets credit for that. But it's not meant to preach to people from my point of view, or attract using a Christian message to get more business and all that. That has nothing to do with that. That's just something I feel like I owe back to him.
What's the last time you cried?
Oh, geez. Last time I cried. Is Isabella in here? It's probably in the backyard here one night.
What about? What happened?
Well, it was at that 0 point. Remember I told you there was a time, several months ago, when you're at 0, and you look up at the sky and you start saying things to the sky and the stars, and bad things and good things and wondering things. Yeah, it was a interesting night.
Wow.
But that's also when I got a little more connected the second time, and then things started happening. So it wasn't just crying. It was a lot of yelling, crying, screaming. Thoughts in your head, crazy thoughts.
Give advice to someone in the industry who may be at the top right now. You've seen highs and lows. Give advice to maybe some young sales rep who feels like, he's on top of the world right now.
Well, nothing goes up forever. No matter how good you are in business, no matter how motivated you are, it's always going to do this. And everybody at the top, you feel like it's going to last forever. You feel like you have money forever. But it's always, something's going to happen. It's going to dip. And when it does, what matters is what you do at the dip, because the dip is usually what brings you to a higher level later on. Meaning you might be like this, you think, oh my God, my life's over. My business is ending. You're down here, and that dip was necessary for you to go like this. You know what I mean?
I just finished Tim Grover winning book. He talks about it. He said every time you win championship, you go like that boss that took you to the top, immediately like you're in heaven, you won, and the boss takes you right back to hell right after it, and that's the only way you're gonna get back up there, and it's just how it works. I agree with it.
Dips are what make us stronger, but while you're going down, it's emotionally, it's horrible.
Actually, let's go back to Win the Storm. You started something that I personally took from you, and I carry that torch. You started a debate, famous debate, hoteling versus
hoteling versus Badger.
What's your real relationship with those two people today and before? Because so many people say it was not real, this and that. Like, give me the debate story.
Sure. I was always looking for something unique, to get, how it is, to get these guys in the industry and gals come together. You got to do something different or weird every year, or there's enough conferences out there. If you don't do something weird, no one's going to come. So I was always on the lookout for that. So Badger was the hated attorney that put contractors out of business in the state of Texas. He's got a reputation. I found out Badger was talking about me in 2016 at the WIND conference. Someone sent me a video. It's called the WIND conference or something. It's a bunch of attorneys and PAs and then also insurance people. And he put a video up in front of people of me and Bella Mia. When Bella Mia was 10, I had a little video on YouTube that said, "So easy a 9-year-old could do it." It was my estimating program.
I remember that.
And it was innocent. It was easy to use to do an estimate to make sure that you had the right profit margin on a pre-cap and how overhead and profit would add to your profit margin. It's just business. He took that video and put it up in front of all these people, hundreds of people, and said, "That's the problem with the industry. He's teaching them how to do fraud." And I heard about this. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? So somehow I got his email and phone number and I sent him a message. I said, "I heard you put a video of my daughter up, da 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 da." And he him and hawed about it, said, "Oh, well, I was just showing, that, you're talking about overhead and profit and you're, trying to make more money off the insurance company." I said, "Yeah, that's what entrepreneurs do. And if you're overhead and profit and they get it, their profit margin goes up, and most of them don't even understand what that means. I'm showing so what?" And so in that conversation, I think he felt a little defensive and bad. I said, "Why don't you come and let's discuss it on stage at my conference?" I said, "Because I don't have anything to hide about it. It's called business." But in a nicer way. And then we started he kind of changed his tone and yada yada. And so we agreed initially it was supposed to be me and him debating or discussing this thing on stage. And then I met John that year just through a referral. He wasn't well known in the policyholder attorney space in our industry in 2015. I mean, I didn't know who he was, but I knew Merlin and all these other guys that came to our show. Because he won a big lawsuit in Sandy. John did, a huge one, class action lawsuit, and then was in New Orleans, but he wasn't really in the space that I was in of storm restoration. He was in the space, but not in the same space. And I met him, and he's got a booth. And then I learned about what he did and turned over in Sandy, which was like 130,000 claims that were fraud and exposed engineering fraud.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, this guy, it's not just a civil lawsuit. This guy actually did some serious stuff. And so when it got time for the Badger debate, I thought it'd be more appropriate to have two attorneys up there. So I was up there with them, kind of moderating and throwing some things in. But two attorneys talking probably better than me and an attorney. And so then John took that over, and then he ran, they did that debate for another 2 years because it was popular. People like to hear the insurance company and the policyholder attorney don't discuss these issues. And I thought it was fun. I think after 3 years, it got a little played out. I think the last time they did it was Dallas. But for that first 1 or 2 years, people love that first one. People love that.
Well, what's your relationship with both of them today?
John, I haven't talked to much in the last, 6 months to a year. I think I text him once in a while. I'm sure he's busy, probably working claims and stuff down in New Orleans. I just haven't talked to him much. I've been in my own fog of war here last year. Badger, haven't talked to him probably in a year.
To finish the video, give me personal advice. Anything?
Personal advice? I would spend less energy on, from what I saw your teach. That's another reason I reached out. I saw he's a preach love, not hate. So I thought maybe he's moving in a new direction. But I would probably spend less time. Look, I talk shit about people too. I gossip, but I do it like this between some friends. But I would be concerned opening yourself up for, I would spend less time and energy focused on trying to talk smack about people, because you got some great followers that love you, but unlike me, you also have some haters. And sometimes you don't even know the haters you have. Because I don't know all my haters. I think some of them are pretty loud, but there's probably just people that just don't like me because they don't know me and they heard something about me. But you also have some folks out there that don't like you only because they don't know you. It's only because when they see you, they see you talking about someone bad. And look, sometimes like the product comparisons, cool, that's cool. But when you get into personal attacks on people, then it's just negative. And so whenever you're doing something like that, it just takes away from positive energy. You know what I mean? And it's not that everybody doesn't do it, but you do it pretty gregariously. You do a good job of it online. And you know what? It gets a lot of likes and attention. But it
actually doesn't. People think it does. Like none of those videos ever trade. Like they don't bring revenue. They don't
monetize. That's the key word. They don't monetize.
They don't. And it even doing like everybody thinks that you do it for attention and you do it for no. They don't bring new followers. They don't bring subscription. They don't bring money. They when I do it, I intentionally do it. And they bring haters. That's the only thing they do. Yeah, you get attention and discovery a little bit, and you build your reputation for being bold and someone who speaks his mind. But that's about it. You don't do it. Like my top 10 videos, none of them are negative videos. It's all guides, like shingle guide, who makes the best siding, best and worst gutter covers. Those are my top videos, not, fake guru video.
Yeah, I would, and I'm not saying just because I was in one of them. I'm just saying in general.
Sure.
It's just anytime you spend your time, it's like me. If I spend my time, there's so many times I could have sued somebody for something. But I know in my head, 25 grand, it's 6 months of my life to sit and dry, So I immediately, I probably wouldn't do that, although I might threaten them. Or chasing a dysfunctional relationship or whatever it is. I've made it, especially this last year. I mean,
block it.
I made a decision. I got a 3-foot wall around me. And anything remotely, if it could be my own mom. My mom gets a little, I hope you're not playing, I should see this, but sometimes they can be emotionally draining. And sometimes I'll cut even family members. If they're getting too much in my energy space, I'm not gonna cut them off forever, but I will remove them from that space. Hey, look, you can call me in a couple of days because I'm not into this, whatever it is. I got an energy field around me. So anything that's negative, now if I'm expelling energy, chasing someone, fighting someone, arguing with someone, and believe me, I've done it my whole life. I've fought with people. But it's energy away from creating. And creating takes positive, this is just a different mindset. You know what I mean? And I like to create stuff. I want to focus on that movie. I want to focus on things. So I try not to focus on anything that's, not to say I'm perfect. I still do dysfunctional things sometimes. I still do wrong things. But what I'm saying is I try to spend I protect my energy. And that means I can't expel negative energy either. You know what I mean? Although I do sometimes. I'm probably bipolar. I'm probably tripolar. I'm OCD, ADD, tripolar. I mean, I got a lot of things wrong with me. But sometimes I get real angry over little things. I probably yell at Frankie too much sometimes. Right, Frankie? Frankie, why I mean, but you can spend all this time, all of a sudden you're sitting there and you realize I'm really that upset because, a banner didn't come out the right way in this way. I mean, but you can spend a lot of, so I'm still capturing myself from those things. But you might be in it, yours might be different, but I'm just saying, whatever it is, you just got to, focus on more positive results. It allows you to be more creative, at least for me.
Oh, great advice.